Chapter 1004. The destruction of the Zanpakuto meant nothing to a Grim Reaper. Especially in the state of Bankai, the consequences of the Zanpakuto being destroyed were extremely serious. Even if it could be repaired in the future, its power would be greatly reduced. However, what angered East Deity the most was that his Zanpakuto was broken into pieces. How was he going to repair it? Don't look so sad. Since you have escaped from the Grim Reaper and become a void, the Zanpakuto is useless. It doesn't matter if it's broken. It doesn't matter anyway. Dustless said with a smile as if it had nothing to do with him. His tone was filled with schadenfreude, which deeply provoked Dong Xianyao. Bullshit! Dong Xianyao roared furiously. Even because of excessive anger, his voice was extremely sharp and numb. Listening to it would make one's soul tremble. You think that's it? Looking at the fragments of the Zanpakuto, Dustless said with disdain. This was just the beginning. The spiritual pressure in his body surged again, emitting a soul-stirring pressure. Due to the overly strong spiritual pressure, even Dong Xianyao cowered and retreated, quickly distancing himself from Wu Chen. A pink light suddenly illuminated the dark space. Is that number 54 Hado, Waste Flame? Dong Xianyao narrowed his eyes and pondered. At the same time, a question arose in his mind. This kind of flame would only burn the target, but for him who was in the void state, its effect was negligible. After the void state, Dong Xianyao's skin was replaced with the void steel skin. It was a world of difference from the previous Grim Reaper state. His defense was almost several times higher. You want to hurt me with this kind of candlelight? Are you not awake? Or are you a child who likes to sleep? Dong Xianyao said sarcastically. After a slight pause, he was about to humiliate Dustless again. However, Dong Xianyao was shocked by Dustless's next move. This guy, is he going to? Looking at the sinister smile on Dustless's face, Dong Xian's expression changed greatly. Soon after, he roared with all his might. If you dare to do that, I will definitely tear you to shreds. In fact, due to her excessive nervousness, East Deity, who had always been elegant, even used vulgarities at this moment. Jejje, Dustless smacked his lips when he heard this, and then he sneered. I'm a person who can't be threatened. The more you threaten me, the more disobedient my hands become. With a stern expression, the pink flame in Dustless's hand shot out rapidly, breaking Dao's 54 waste flame. As soon as his voice trailed off, a disc-shaped flame emerged from the ground. Its target wasn't the Eastern Deity Palace, but rather, the shattered Zanpakuto that had fallen to the ground. I'll definitely kill you, you bastard! The furious Eastern Deity Xiang roared loudly. Soon after, he opened his mouth and condensed a huge void flash. Whoosh! Whoosh! Perhaps the heavens took pity on the Eastern Deity Xiang. This time, he was in the same trench as him. Boom! Boom! At the last moment, the void flash successfully stopped the flame of the disc and blew it into ashes. However, the power of the void flash was extraordinary. It was an all-out attack of the Eastern Deity Xiang. Even though it destroyed Dustless's plan to melt the Zanpakuto, the explosion of the void flash was too powerful and successfully affected the shattered Zanpakuto. Under the horrified gaze of the Eastern Deity Xiang, the Zanpakuto that had accompanied him for hundreds of years disappeared forever. Poof! The world in front of him turned black. The furious Eastern Deity was about to vomit blood. It was as if all the blood in his body had been sucked out, leaving only skin and bones. His piercing gaze was so piercing that no one dared to look him in the eye. Allah Allah Allah! Don't stare at me with such a ferocious gaze. This has nothing to do with me. Dustless shrugged his shoulders with an innocent expression. It was the Eastern Deity Xiang who wanted him to destroy his Zanpakuto. Go to hell! As if sensing the anger of the Eastern Deity Xiang, the half-completed Hogyoku in his chest felt his will and continuously released an endless amount of spiritual pressure. Roar, roar, roar. The roar that obviously belonged to the greater void came out from the throat of the Eastern Deity Xiang. At this moment, his voidification had reached a new level. His entire body was wrapped in milky white spiritual pressure. It was airtight. Suddenly, both of his hands straightened. A total of 10 fingers were aimed at Dustless, and at the same time, a black light flashed. 10 void flashes? Your hatred for me is really unforgettable. Dustless could not help but sigh. The fluctuation of the destruction of the void flash caused the time and space in the black cavity to be distorted. Dustless could even see the scene in the depths of the universe. Go to hell, you eyesore of a devil. As the voice that contained monstrous hatred fell, the 10 black void flashes also disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The void flash and the black night sky merged into one, but through the perception of observation hockey, Dustless could still clearly perceive that dozens of flashes that reached the level of destruction were crushing towards him. Seeing this, Dustless did not dodge. His expression was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. He even hummed a tune out of tune. Ran away. That's good. When you and Aizen complete the Hogyoku, I will come and shear the sheep. Smirking, Dustless planned in his heart. Eastern deity Xiang had stepped into Hueco Mundo in the blink of an eye and disappeared. In the dark space, only the 10 void flashes that were ignored by Dustless were left. The moment the void flash was about to swallow Dustless, the void beside him suddenly distorted. Kamui. The distorted space was instantly magnified dozens of times. All the void flashes changed their trajectory and were sucked in the blink of an eye. They did not even touch Dustless's body. Chapter 1005. The Kamui of the left and right eye had different abilities. It could be used for both offense and defense. It was a perfect combination. Just one more step. Dustless thought of something. He got closer to the Kamui and deliberately got closer to the power of Void Flash. His whole body smelled rotten. Sigh. Being a professional actor is really hard. I don't know how Aizen survived for so many years. Wu Chen sighed and said. Looking around, there was a burn on his arm caused by the Void Flash. It was completely done by himself just now. The void in front of him twisted again, and a wave of ripples spread out rapidly like water ripples. Kamui! Asterisk crack. Asterisk in the bottomless black cavity, a mysterious force twisted and exploded. Then, a ray of warm sunlight shone in from the outside. Dustless subconsciously blocked the light. Through the gaps between his fingers, he saw that Soul Society had been restored to its original state. The invaders were also dealt with. The beautiful scenery of Soul Society was restored. Chinkuen, you're injured? Unohana Retsu was surprised. Unohana Retsu's words attracted everyone's attention. They looked at Dustless, or rather, they looked at his burned arm. It seems to be caused by Void Flash, Head Captain Yamamoto said. He had fought countless battles in the past 2,000 years. He could tell that Dustless's injury was caused by Void Flash. And it was a very powerful one. Dustless nodded and said awkwardly, I'm sorry, Head Captain. East Sensei's strength increased too much. I didn't pay attention and let him escape. Facing everyone's gaze, Wu Chen said without blushing or panting. That's not important. However, we must investigate the source of this matter. Head Captain Yamamoto said coldly. He then said to Dustless, let's leave the 11th Division to Vice Captain Zaraki for now. You should go to the 4th Division for treatment. The Void Flash that injured you is very powerful. You should rest for a while. Hearing this, Wu Chen shook his head like a rattledrum, wave after wave. This was just an act he put on purpose to find an excuse to let the East Deity Lord go. In reality, he was completely fine. With the Ten Tails recovery ability, it was only a matter of time. Chinkuen, don't you trust the 4th Division? You used to be the vice captain of the 4th Division. Unohana Retsu said sadly. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew this black-bellied captain very well. In that case, I'll have to trouble Captain Unohana. Inside the 4th Division's building, the special room was surrounded by smoke. It was extremely hot. There was nothing extra in the room except for a large pool. Dustless was lying comfortably in the hot spring with his eyes closed. He was humming a tune. There's such a good thing. Why didn't I notice it when I was the vice captain of the 4th Division? What a mistake. This mysterious pool of water could actually heal the wounds on the body. It's most likely the path of return was learned from the head of the Zero Division. He opened his eyes and rested his head on his arms. He looked up at the ceiling. In the entire Soul Society, whether it was Urahara Kisuk or Unohana Retsu, the source of this healing method originated from Chilan Temple Tenshilang. After a long time, Wuchen suddenly noticed that the wooden door was pushed open. In the smoke, there was a figure with white skin and a curvy figure looming in the air. Gulp. Dustless rubbed his eyes. He thought he was hallucinating because of his old age. Who knew that after rubbing his eyes, the curvaceous figure looked even more real. She walked gracefully and slowly appeared in front of Dustless. Captain Unohana. Dustless's face instantly turned red. This was the first time in his life that he exclaimed. The figure that appeared in the steam was Unohana Retsu. She was only using a simple bathrobe to cover herself. Her skin was as clean as a gem. It was white with a hint of red. It was like the work of God. Unohana Retsu had a gentle temperament. Even if she covered her huge snow-white breasts, Dustless, who was experienced in flowers, could still tell the size of her breasts through her cleavage. Maybe it was because the ground was too slippery. Unohana Retsu was swaying as she walked. Dustless's old eyes followed Unohana Retsu's movements. "What's there to see, Chinkuen?" Unohana Retsu asked curiously as she looked at Dustless's red face. She didn't expect Dustless to be looking at her. After all, they had been together for some time. Unohana Retsu understood Dustless's temperament. He wasn't a pervert. Being asked like this, Dustless returned to normal in the blink of an eye and was incomparably calm. "Nothing. Are you asking me why I was distracted?" "Actually, I was thinking about Sosuke Aizen's motive." Although he looked calm, Dustless's eyes were rolling. He was shouting in his heart, "Why didn't you tell me earlier that you're going to the hot springs when you're injured?" Chapter 1006. It was no wonder that Dustless recovered so quickly. After all, in Soul Society, it was quite common for men and women to bathe together. However, even though bathing together is popular in Soul Street, the captains of Soul Society don't seem to have this unique skill. As Dustless's thoughts spun, a small ripple appeared on the surface of the water. When he looked up, Unohua Lai's entire body had been buried under the water while Dustless was distracted. Gulp. After taking a deep breath, Dustless looked away and calmly laid back down in the water. "There's no need to care about this. I'd be an idiot if I didn't take advantage of it. After all, I'm not the one losing out." Dustless comforted himself. Even Unohua Lai, who was a female, did not care about such things. There was no need for him to care about what the world thought of him. Hee. A sly smile appeared on Dustless's face as he looked at Unohua Lai's snow-white skin and said, "Captain Unohua, why don't you let me help you scrub your back? I'm very familiar with this." Dustless's female friends in the system often asked him to scrub their backs, so he was very familiar with this skill. "There's no need for that." Hearing this, Unohua Lai's eyes flashed with awkwardness as her face turned red. She immediately shook her head and refused. "Yong-in can do this. You're a captain now, so there's no need to trouble you. When I was the vice captain, I didn't see you asking me to scrub your back." Dustless complained in his heart, but he kept his mouth shut. Since Unohua Lai did not like it, there was no need for him to force it. Being too shameless would only make Unohua Lai feel annoyed. Looking up, Unohua Lai tried her best to look natural. However, in the eyes of Dustless, who was very observant, it was full of flaws. "It's a bit early to talk about this." Withdrawing his gaze from Unohua Lai's delicate body, Wuchen's fiery heart calmed down. His clear eyes returned to their usual calmness. Dustless quietly leaned against the side of the indoor hot spring, thinking about what had happened recently. Wanless Empire, Sosuke Aizen, and Hueco Mundo are all hostile forces. After calming down, Dustless's body emitted an icy cold air. The originally warm spring water instantly became extremely cold. Chin Jun, unknowingly, Unohua Lai leaned over with a natural expression. Perhaps it was because he was too engrossed in his thoughts, but Dustless did not notice Unohua's approach. He only raised his head when he felt someone touch him. Captain Uno Flower, you. Dustless's body twitched uncontrollably. Soon after, he calmly asked, yes, could it be that something happened? In fact, because they were so close, Dustless could clearly see the cleavage that Unohua was covering. That soul-stirring curve caused Dustless to feel dizzy. His thoughts were a little hazy, and he couldn't speak clearly. We've known each other for so long. You can call me Lai from now on. Unohua Lai said gently with a refreshing smile. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with hope. He was disappointed that he was happy for nothing. He thought that Unohua Lai was throwing herself at him, and his heart was extremely disappointed. I know, Unohua Lai. Dustless sighed and returned to normal. He looked at the ceiling in boredom. His lifeless eyes were extremely depressed. What are you disappointed about, Shinjun? Unohua Lai asked curiously. Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes and said, of course it's. Looking at Unohua Lai's smiling face, Dustless tactfully shut his mouth. If he said that he was peeking at Unohua Lai's beauty, he would definitely be silenced by this first sword 8. Dustless closed his eyes. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with Unohua Lai, he felt a cold touch on his back that caused him to be stunned. Turning around, he saw Unohua Lai. Her face was flushed, and she was trying her best to remain calm. However, her fingers that were touching Dustless's back were still trembling. Captain Unohua is scrubbing my back? A strange ripple appeared in Dustless's heart. He immediately calmed down. Unohua Lai's performance was very normal. If he overreacted, it would mean that he was hiding something. Those people are really unbelievable. They can control 2 powers at the same time. Moreover, they are the powers of 2 opposing races. Unohua Lai said suspiciously. Her voice was filled with astonishment. At the same time, she did not stop what she was doing. She carefully scrubbed Dustless's back. Her technique was very unfamiliar, and she did not control her strength well. It was probably her first time doing this. Even so, Dustless still enjoyed it. But there is nothing strange about this. Dustless's expression was extremely calm. The combination of Shinigami and Hollow broke the boundary between 2 races. This method was very similar to the Uchiha clan and Senju clan. They were clearly 2 opposing races, but when they fused together, they could step into a whole new realm. It was as if the heavens were deliberately teasing the world. Sometimes, only when 2 opposing powers fuse together can one enter a higher dimension. Lai, you came to me for this answer, right? Dustless turned his head and looked at Unohua Lai with a smile. Although Unohua Lai was usually very gentle, this was only on the surface. In fact, she was also an arrogant woman who pursued the extreme. Actually, there is another race that has more advantages than the combination of Shinigami and Hollow. Dustless suddenly said while fiddling with the water like a child. There is such a mysterious existence in this world? Unohua Lai was puzzled. Of course there is. Dustless gave an affirmative answer. Immediately, a mysterious figure appeared on the water surface. He was wearing a white robe and held a transparent bow in his hand. The destroyers. Chapter 1007. Hearing this, Unohua Aretsu fell silent and stopped what she was doing. Shinjun, how did you know about such a secret? Unohua Aretsu could not understand. Almost all information about the war from 1,000 years ago had been concealed by the Gotei 13 and Central Room 46. Wu Chen actually knew the secret behind it. She was really puzzled. There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall. The war 1,000 years ago affected the entire Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the main world. Do you think it's possible to erase all traces, Retsu? Dustless asked, ignoring Unohua Retsu's question. After pausing for a moment, Dustless continued, the current 12th Division is still conducting experiments on Quincy. Even if I wanted to avoid it, I would have heard about it. 12th Division? Captain Ye? So that's how it is. Hearing this, Unohua Aretsu gave a bitter smile before helplessly sighing. It's just as you said. Quincy has more advantages than any other race. Death gods needed a long time to accumulate strength, and after reaching a bottleneck, they could only be like Captain Ye, using a long time to accumulate strength. Voids, on the other hand, had their bottleneck by devouring each other. Vasto Lord was their final destination. Quincy, on the other hand, was a cheating tool. They didn't need much spiritual pressure because Quincy could directly absorb spiritual power from the outside world to satisfy their own needs. Their advantages were self-evident. This shouldn't be the reason for the war 1,000 years ago. Death gods shouldn't be so narrow-minded. Destroying Quincy because of jealousy was too absurd. If they killed Quincy just because he was talented, it wouldn't make sense. It would be too much of a joke. Of course not. The main problem is that they have an extremely evil king, Unohwa Retsu said in a deep voice. When she talked about that king, her voice trembled slightly. Evidently, she had a deep impression of that so-called king. Hearing this, Dustless understood who Unohwa Retsu was talking about. A ferocious-looking man immediately appeared in his mind. Quincy only had one king. What's the king's name? Dustless asked, feigning ignorance. His name is Yawach. In the end, Unohwa Lai said king's name. Soon after, she said in a serious tone, that man is not only powerful, but his abilities are also world-shaking, toppling the common sense of the world. Dustless gently nodded when he heard this. He had some understanding of the Great War 1,000 years ago. Although the Grim Reaper won in the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. It was the kind of victory where he had to sacrifice himself to kill the enemy. Some of Yawach's abilities were even more powerful than his. What happened to that man in the end? He was probably killed by the head captain. Dustless asked deliberately. In fact, Yawach had been completely defeated at that time. But for some reason, Yamamoto only made Yawach lose his strength, heartbeat, and consciousness. In short, Old Man Yamamoto only sealed Yawach in the end and did not kill him. The reason was unclear. This, Unohwa Lai paused and thought back to 1,000 years ago. She then bitterly smiled and said, I don't know what Genryusai was thinking at that time. But I still remember Genryusai's helpless expression. It was as if he could kill Yawach but couldn't. So that's how it is. That old man Yamamoto did it on purpose? Hearing this, Dustless suddenly smiled. Before, he had some vague guesses about Yawach's background. Now, Unohwa Lai's words confirmed Dustless's guess. There was no doubt that old man Yamamoto had defeated Yawach 1,000 years ago. At that time, he clearly had the ability to kill Yawach, but the head captain only made Yawach lose his strength, heartbeat, and consciousness. In the end, he did not kill Yawach and only sealed him. Although the head captain usually looked very gentle, like a neighbor's grandfather, the Godei 13's predecessor was, in essence, an assassin group. Sealing Yawach was the complete opposite of the head captain's style. When facing a big threat, he would always want to get rid of it as soon as possible. He would never let Yawach go so easily, and he would not let a disaster that destroyed Soul Society live like in the future. Therefore, according to Dustless's guess, it was not that the head captain did not want to kill Yawach, but that he had no choice but to seal him. Maybe that bastard Yawach is also a part of the Soul King's body. That's why old man Yamamoto was so cautious. He only made Yawach's strength, consciousness, and heartbeat disappear, and then sealed him. Dustless speculated. Maybe killing Yawach was equivalent to killing the Soul King. Although the whole world would not collapse and disappear because of this, there must be some kind of big problem that could not be solved that forced head captain Yamamoto to not kill him. Chinkuen, this kind of thing should not be told to outsiders. Unohana continued to scrub Dustless's back. She patted his shoulder and whispered in Dustless's ear, no matter what the truth is, Yawach is an extremely dangerous man. However, the head captain sealed him. At the end, Unohana let out a sigh of relief. It had been a long time since she last felt relaxed. Sealed? That's just the head captain's bluff. I'm afraid it won't be long before Yawach regains consciousness. Dustless shook his head and stretched. He did not want to think too much about it. After all, it was just a guess. But one thing was for sure. Yawach wanted to devour the Soul King, and Dustless also had the same idea. Therefore, Dustless wanted to know everything about Yawach. Chapter 1008. About half an hour later, The gentle Unohana Retsu stood up and moved her sore shoulders. Sit down, Retsu. I have many things to ask you. Chen Xiaobei pulled Unohana Retsu to the side. Both of them were wearing simple bath towels, but there was no awkwardness when they talked. The atmosphere was very relaxed. What a pity! Getting her is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Dustless glanced at Unohana Retsu from the corner of his eyes and smacked his lips. At first, he was very narcissistic and thought that Unohana Retsu was here to seduce him. Who would have thought that she would just help him wipe his back and nothing else? She didn't even have any intentions in that area. Dustless was happy for nothing and felt very depressed. Chenkuan, do you still remember East Sage's pearl before she betrayed us? After a moment of silence, Unohana Retsu asked calmly. Dustless's heart sank. He naturally knew what pearl Unohana Retsu was talking about, Hogyoku. Urahara Kisuk had also researched that thing. I heard that it was used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Nihility. However, after Urahara Kisuk betrayed Soul Society, the pearl he researched also disappeared. Unohana Retsu said something shocking. Retsu, do you mean, a bad idea popped up in his heart? Wu Chen asked in a roundabout way, hoping to fish out some information. The pearl Urahara Kisuk had researched was used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Nihility. Its purpose was the same as East Sage's, but they both seemed to have failed. So, Unohana Retsu's expression became more serious. She said seriously, if it's possible, what if the two failed pearls fused together? Puchi. Dustless spat out saliva when he heard this. He looked at Unohana Retsu as if he had seen a ghost. Where did the perfect Hogyoku come from? It was created by the fusion of Aizen's Hogyoku and Urahara Kisuk's pearl. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew about it. However, it was unscientific for Unohana Retsu to know about it. Did the head captain tell you all this? Dustless raised his eyebrows and asked. Unohua shook her head and did not mince her words. This is just my guess. You just said that only by combining the power of void and death can one reach a higher level. That's why I came up with this idea. If two orbs with opposite attributes fuse, perhaps a miracle can happen. Those are your exact words. Dustless was stunned and speechless for a moment. He couldn't help but complain in his heart, if I knew your IQ was so terrible, I wouldn't have said those words. I would have left them to rot in my stomach. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Dustless urged, if that's the case, we should immediately send an expeditionary force to Hueco Mundo to capture that crazy bastard East Deity, lest he does something irreversible. Flattening Hueco Mundo and killing all of Aizen's minions was Dustless's long-cherished wish. Crazy bastard. Unohana Retsu rolled her eyes at Dustless and said in a bad mood, most of the crazy things he did were forced by you. However, I do need to inform you on Lu Sai. 10 days later, Dustless finally stepped out of the 4th Division. As soon as he stepped out of the 4th Division's shooting range, a 3-meter-tall man blocked Dustless's path. Head Captain, it's a sunny day and you're not patrolling. Instead, you're blocking the 4th Division's path to welcome me. How can I accept such a warm welcome? I'm flattered. Dustless crossed his arms and said with a smile. Although he said that, his face was filled with murderous intent. This guy must be here for East Deity. This old man's 7th Division is the Inner Courts Guard team, responsible for the safety of Quiet Soul Society. I was supposed to deal with East Deity that day, but who knew he wouldn't let you go? Here, Zhuozhen's voice was filled with melancholy, but then he remembered East Deity's character and said coldly, this old man and East Deity have known each other for 100 years, I know his character. He wouldn't betray Soul Society. There must be a reason for his sudden betrayal. Wu Chen's face suddenly condensed a cold light when he heard that. He sneered and said, hidden trouble? What a joke. A rotten peach will always be a rotten peach. East Deity's betrayal is an indisputable fact. Since you trust East Deity so much, go to Hueco Mundo and ask him himself. I still have things to do, goodbye. With that, Dustless walked past him. Stop, this old man didn't allow you to leave. Soul Society's only friend had betrayed him, and Zhuozhen was already furious. Now that Wu Chen ignored him, He immediately pulled out his Zanpakuto in anger. Clang, clang, clang. The Zanpakuto's cold light was aimed at Dustless. Zhuozhen's tone was full of hostility. This old man's duty is to protect Quiet Soul Society. Since you fought with East Deity in Quiet Soul Society that day, you must report the result to me. Dustless's footsteps slowed down, revealing half of his cold face. He said sarcastically, "So that's how it is. After beating around the bush, in the end, you just want to ask me if I killed East Deity, right? Don't change the subject. This is official business. You must report the details to me, then I will report it to the head captain." Zhuozhen said matter-of-factly. "Report it to you?" Fixing his bone-piercing eyes on Zhuozhen, who was wearing a mask, Dustless taunted him mercilessly, "You're just a bear. You want me to report the battle to you? Who do you think you are? Your hands have reached too far. This kind of thing is none of your business." Chapter 1009. Dustless didn't like this stinky bear at all. Sometimes he would just do his job half-heartedly. But when it came to matters that had nothing to do with him, he just had to interfere. "You have to report East Deity's situation to me. This is part of my job. It has nothing to do with personal relationships." Zhuozhen said with a determined look, "East Deity. He is definitely not the kind of person who would betray Soul Society for no reason." "I see." After talking for a while, Dustless finally understood what he meant. East Deity wouldn't betray Soul Society for no reason, would he? "Are you implying that I forced him to do so?" Humph. Zhuozhen snorted and didn't reply. Obviously, that was what he meant. "Sorry, I don't have time to chat with you. That's all. If you have any complaints, you can complain to the head captain." Dustless waved his hand and left Zhuozhen alone. "Bastard! How dare you? Do you really think I can't do anything to you?" Zhuozhen was so angry that he trembled. He was ignored again and again. He wanted to calm down, but it was too difficult. Visible ripples appeared in the void around him. They were as magnificent as the waves of the sea. Strange energy waves surged out of Zhuozhen's body. "How dare you show off your spiritual pressure to me? You're not even as good as my vice captain." The invisible ripples spread to Dustless's body. His hair stood on end. Dustless turned his head and sneered, "You're such a lousy captain. You must have joined the Godii 13 through the back door of the head captain." "Do you want to try?" Zhuozhen asked coldly. Then the sky darkened, and a shadow of a few hundred meters tall appeared. It was a ferocious giant with a blade. It was completely composed of spiritual pressure, and its aura was monstrous. It looked down on Wuchen on the ground. Seeing this, Dustless raised his head and glanced at the black shadow. He curled his lips in disdain and said casually, "It's just an empty shell. In fact, it's just as fragile as a blockhead like you. It can be broken with one poke." Golden spiritual pressure overflowed from his body. Dustless was about to teach Zhuozhen a lesson when a beautiful figure walked out from the 4th division. He had clearly taken a step forward, but in an instant he had flown 100 steps away. "Captain Uno Flower." Zhuozhen lowered his voice. He wasn't the only one who was afraid of the captain of Uno Flower. Almost every captain and vice-captain of Soul Society was afraid of her. Only a weirdo like Dustless and Unohua had fun together. Everyone else stayed away from them. "This is a private matter between me and him. It's best that Captain Uno Flower doesn't interfere. This is the 4th division. If we fight, it's inevitable that we'll implicate the powerless medical personnel." Zhuozhen was still unwilling to back down when he thought of the relationship between him and Dong Xinyao. His scarlet eyes stared at Dustless fiercely. If it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. "Captain Zhuozhen, are you threatening me?" Unohua smiled gently. But this time, it was different from before. Her entire being was dark and gloomy. Her laughter sounded like the screams of ghosts. "Bush, bush." Zhuozhen was shocked. He felt a chill down his spine. A dense murderous aura was quietly staring at him. It was as if he would be killed on the spot if he did anything wrong. The instincts of beasts were sharp. Zhuozhen was drenched in cold sweat. He knew what was good for him and kept his Zanpakuto. The faint shadow in the sky also disappeared. "You bastard! Are you really the captain of the 11th Division? Don't tarnish the name of Jianba. Come at me if you have the guts. Don't hide behind a woman. If you're a man, come out and fight me. Zhuozhen, who was unwilling to give up, roared loudly, feeling extremely aggrieved. I'm sorry. I just came out from the 4th Division. My body is still weak. I'm not fit to fight. Wu Chen chuckled, completely ignoring Zhuozhen's disdain. He provoked him in a strange way. I just want to see your face when you want to hit me but can't. The sadder you are, the happier I will be. You? He lifted his huge finger and pointed it at Wu Chen while trembling. The flames on the left side of the formation were attacking his heart. If it wasn't for Uno Hua Lai, who was an unfathomable existence, he would have killed Wu Chen with his sword. This kid's poisonous mouth was even more infuriating. I like to live off women. If you think you're strong enough, you can ignore Ano Hu as captain and come at me directly. Dustless shrugged and made an expression that said, I'm not going to run away. Bastard, if you have the guts, come out and fight me face to face. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Zhuozhen kept scratching his head. This was the only thing he could think of. He could not think of any other curse words to deal with Dustless. Compared to Dustless, who knew how to curse, he was still 1,000 miles away. Boring. Goodbye, Lai. Seeing that Zhuozhen was at a loss of words, Dustless lost all interest. He cupped his hands at Uno Hua and thanked her. Then he disappeared along with his spiritual pressure. What a coward! Seeing Dustless leaving, Zhuozhen said angrily, Why is Uno Hua protecting him? A coward like him is not fit to be the captain. If you didn't protect him, I would have killed him. Uno Hua pursed her lips and smiled. Then she explained, Captain Zhuozhen, you must be mistaken. The reason why I didn't leave is not to protect Lord Qin, but to protect you in the dark. It was precisely because of Uno Hua Retsu's presence that Dustless did not choose to make a move. Instead, he was toying with left formation like a child. If he really did make a move, the 7th Division would have already started preparing for their captain's funeral. Although they were both team leaders, according to Uno Hua Retsu's estimations, if Zhuozhen were to go up against the unfathomable Dustless, he would probably be instantly killed by the black coffin descending from the sky. Chapter 10:10. Uno Hua Retsu was both angry and amused. She thought that Zhuozhen knew his place, but he thought that Dustless was scared. That brat has only been a death god for half a year, but I've been a death god for dozens of times longer than him. I was even personally trained by Lord Yuan Lu Sai. Zhuozhen said proudly. There were only a few people who were taught by the head captain, and he was one of them. He did have the right to be arrogant. Anyway, don't go find Shinjun. The head captain doesn't want Quiet Soul Society to have internal strife. After glancing at the hopeless left team, Uno Hua Lai turned around and entered the 4th Division. Before she left, she couldn't help but say, Shinjun is a very scary, but also very cute person. I'm on his side. Captain Uno Hua. What do you mean? Zhuozhen was taken aback and asked in an unfriendly tone. After being a captain for dozens of years, he naturally knew what Uno Hua meant. It was a direct threat. In other words, if there was a war, Uno Hua Retsu would side with Dustless. It's exactly what you think. Captain Zhuozhen, the 4th Division still has things to do. Goodbye. Without turning around, Uno Hua left Zhuozhen with her back. Being trained by the head captain was indeed something to be proud of. However, if he thought that he was superior and looked down on everyone else, it would be a joke. The head captain was the strongest death god in the past 1,000 years, but he was not invincible. Bastard. Seeing this, Zhuozhen's heart was filled with anger, and a sense of grievance and resentment arose spontaneously. Today seemed to be the most unlucky day in his life. He was ignored and slapped in the face again and again. His rough and thick face turned purple and black. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The 1st Division held a captain's meeting as usual. I've decided to send an expeditionary force into Hueco Mundo to find traces of East Deity and capture him. The head captain opened his turbid old eyes. They were not as unfocused as before. His gaze was as sharp as a knife and as sharp as an eagle's. It was very threatening. The head captain said in an imposing manner, "If East Deity is the culprit behind everything, he must be arrested and brought to justice." Hearing this, Dustless looked at Unohwa-retsu. This was probably the result of her discussion with the head captain. "Sir Head Captain, I'm willing to go to Hueco Mundo." Zuozhen was the first to volunteer. "It's not suitable for you to go to Hueco Mundo. Everyone knows about your relationship with Captain East Deity. If you don't see it, then it will be bad." Hearing this, Zuozhen's face darkened. He looked at the source of the voice and found that it was Wuchen. "Don't slander me. If I'm not suitable, do you think you're suitable?" Zuozhen sneered. He didn't have a good impression of Dustless. Hearing this, Wuchen smiled calmly and walked out of the group of captains. He also volunteered to fight, saying, "Everyone knows about my conflict with Eastern Deity. The most suitable person for this expedition to Hueco Mundo is undoubtedly me." Aizen Sokiai stood out and said, "You're the captain of the 11th Division. If you leave, who will be in charge of the Great Void from Soul Society and the Modern Realm? I personally recommend you to be the captain. In the end, you're just afraid that I'll kill your dogs. You'll have a better chance if you find a soft-hearted Zuozhen." Dustless disdained. At the same time, he organized his thoughts. Just as he was about to argue, the head captain spoke first. "The captain of the 11th Division is indeed not suitable to go to Hueco Mundo, but..." Yamamoto nodded calmly and said, "East Deity is about to betray Soul Society. The 7th Division is now in a slump. Since Captain Dustless wants to go to Hueco Mundo, then transfer to the 7th Division and become the captain. If I transfer to the 7th Division and become the new captain, then who will be the captain of the 11th Division? Sword 8? Dustless guessed in his heart. He subconsciously looked at Old Man Yamamoto. Although he hid it very well, the pride in Old Man Yamamoto's eyes was clearly seen by Dustless. Could it be that cunning old man? Dustless instantly understood the head captain's intention. He cursed in his heart, "If I'm not wrong, Zaraki should be the one to replace me. I didn't expect him to take advantage of me in the end." Dustless shook his head and sighed. The head captain's next words confirmed his guess. Captain Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division and replaced by the original vice-captain, Zaraki. His strength is obvious to all. He is completely qualified to be the new Sword 8. The head captain's old voice revealed a touch of dominance. "I agree with both hands and feet," Dustless said indifferently. "I also agree," Unohana-retsu followed. "The vice-captain of the 11th Division? That Ryatsu monster. Although he doesn't know Bankai, his rough Ryatsu is indeed suitable to be a captain. Plus, his vitality is very strong. If that's the case, I also agree," Yukitake Fukaku said. Okitake Jushra also agreed. Old Man Yamamoto was his teacher, so he naturally had to support him at this time. Seeing this, the head captain smiled with satisfaction. He waved his hand and said in a powerful voice, "If that's the case, Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division, and Zaraki will be the new Sword 8. The mission of going to Hueco Mundo will be handed over to the 7th Division." Dustless was indifferent. After all, as long as he was the captain, it didn't matter which division it was. He didn't expect the so-called members to be of any help anyway. At the crucial moment, he still had to rely on himself. Others were unreliable. Chapter 10-11. Sosuke Aizen's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with despair. There was no doubt that Dustless's strength was enough to capture Ise-sensei. Once he was captured, Aizen's plan would fail. What's worse, he would be exposed. Aizen's brain raced as he tried to think of a solution, but he couldn't think of a suitable one. He could only watch Dustless's back as he left. At least tell Ise-sensei about this, let him hide for a while. Aizen made a decision. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo as he wished. The first impression of this barren land was that it was stingy. Kakaka! In the boundless void, a blinding white light suddenly flashed. Then, a door that connected to a different dimension appeared. Then, a figure rushed out from it. Is this the Expeditionary Army's camp? Looking down at the Expeditionary Army encampment below, Dustless muttered to himself. His body shook as he landed on the ground. At the same time, several figures rushed over. Hello, I am the captain of Hueco Mundo's Expeditionary Army. My name is Embroidered Shell. A middle-aged man wearing a death armor came over and said politely to Dustless. Isn't this guy Embroidered Shell? He replaced Ikamaru Jin's 3rd Division captain after Ikamaru Jin and Aizen betrayed Soul Society? He's not a good guy either. Dustless confirmed this person's origin and identity. Embroidered Shell gave off a similar feeling to Aizen. His first impression was that he was gentle and polite. He didn't have the arrogance of a Death Expeditionary Army captain. Instead, he was as approachable as an ordinary person. In fact, this was all a disguise. This guy was just a poisonous snake that hid his tongue. If he exposed a flaw, he would open his bloody mouth and deliver a fatal blow. In short, he was the same as Aizen, shrewd and scheming. Dustless went straight to the point. Captain Tianbei, the head captain should have informed you beforehand. My purpose for coming here is that East Deity wants to. The Heavenly Shell embroidery assistant nodded when she heard this. Shortly after, she laughed loudly and said, You don't have to worry about this. Our expeditionary army has already detected the traces of the Eastern Deity Fortress. However, at this point, the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant scratched her head awkwardly and sighed helplessly. However, I only managed to find traces of him. His abilities are terrifyingly strong, and I am no match for him. Sigh, it's all my fault for being so useless that the Soul Society had to send someone. This is very normal. East Deity Yu's strength is beyond Death God's knowledge. There are only a handful of people in Soul Society who can fight him head-on. Captain Tianbei, you don't have to belittle yourself. Dustless glanced at the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant. His expression was natural. He had expected this. With the half-completed Hogyoku, East Deity's strength would increase tremendously. The only thing that puzzled him was that it had only been half a month since East Deity Fortress was kicked out of Soul Society. In the vast Hueco Mundo and with the limited manpower of the Expeditionary Army, it had only taken half a month to find traces of East Deity Fortress. This efficiency was unreliable. However, I still have to congratulate Captain Tianbei. East Deity Fortress is now an important criminal of Soul Society. If you capture him, it will definitely be a great achievement. Dustless cupped his hands and congratulated. One would not hit a smiling person. No matter what happened to the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant in the future, at the very least, she was still on Soul Society's side. It is my duty to serve Soul Society until the day I die. The Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant said solemnly. Immediately after, she pulled Dustless to the Expeditionary Army's encampment and said, You have traveled thousands of miles from Soul Society to Hueco Mundo. Although the Expeditionary Army has very few resources of all kinds, a welcome meal is absolutely indispensable. Dustless did not refuse and followed the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant to the Expeditionary Army's encampment. The only thing that made him uncomfortable and strange was that he had only passed through a world-crossing gate to reach Hueco Mundo. As for the thousands of miles, in the evening, a banquet was held at the Expeditionary Army's encampment, which was much more abundant than the usual monotonous meals. Most of the so-called Expeditionary Army were abandoned people of Soul Society. Most of them were exiled sinners and criminals. Soul Society would never care about them and would even forget them directly. This was a group of abandoned people. That night, perhaps because he drank too much, Dustless entered a dream early, or perhaps because of the sudden change of environment, Dustless was a little uncomfortable and his head was dizzy all day. Boom, boom. At midnight, a loud explosion resounded through the starry sky within 100 miles. The destructive fluctuations were inhumane and almost wiped out the entire Expeditionary Army's encampment in an instant. I've just arrived and there are already great voids coming to my door. Why are they not giving me face? Caught off guard, Dustless was buried in the sand pit and it took him a long time to wake up from his daze. Then, he saw his hockey spread out like water ripples, and the great voids around him did not let him go. A Vasto Lord, and a few Ajuchas. In addition, there are a lot of Jillian. Such an exaggerated lineup should not be directed at the Expeditionary Army. Since it was not directed at the Expeditionary Army, the target could only be Dustless, a newcomer. Eisen, that traitor, told Dongson in advance that he wanted me to come to Hueco Mundo, so he sent Vasto Lord to plot against me? Dustless whispered, and the sky suddenly turned golden. When the mysterious Vasto Lord noticed that Dustless was still alive, he casually shot out a huge golden void flash. Due to its power, it directly dyed the dark night into a dazzling day. In a trance, Dustless saw a female great voids with long golden hair. Chapter 10-12. So it's her. What a pity. You Vasto Lord were born with the curse of fate. You're just pawns used by Eisen Sosuke. Ignoring the void flash, Dustless's body glowed with a bright light as he dashed out at a speed beyond any creature's comprehension. Boom, boom, boom. The huge void flash created a huge crater in the ground. A large part of the silver desert was scorched. All life forms caught in the blast were annihilated. It must be an illusion. The blonde void muttered to herself. She suddenly felt a flash of light pass by her shoulder. When she tried to sense it, it disappeared. Now that she thought about it, it must have been an illusion. How strange. You should be called Hannibal. Now you've become a raid. How shocking. It seems that East Senpai has been driven crazy by me. He's using the half-finished Hogyoku to arraid you. A ghostly whisper came from behind her. Hannibal's expression changed as she turned around. Death God. Hannibal glared at Dustless and clenched her fists. She turned to look at the scorched land. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She was hit by the void flash. How could she be unharmed? This was cheating. Don't worry. I won't kill you. Dustless chuckled. He could see that Hannibal's blonde hair was covered in sweat. Her vigilance was clear. East Senpai ordered you to come, right? Eisen was still in Soul Society. Only East Senpai could order Hannibal. I have no right to tell you that. Holding the sharp bone sword, Hannibal said stubbornly, Death God and voids are natural enemies. It's normal for me to kill you. No one ordered me. I'm a Vasto Lord. There's no one in Hueco Mundo who can order me around. You're quite stubborn. Dustless couldn't help but feel sorry for Hannibal. From the beginning to the end, she was just a pawn of Eisen. The most melodramatic thing was that in the future, Eisen thought that Hannibal had no value and instantly killed her with his blade. She was a synonym for tragedy. Ring turn. After the cold shout, Hannibal was nowhere to be seen. Even though I don't know why, it seems like I was only able to escape Void Flash's attack by sheer luck. Hannibal appeared on Dustless's right. Seeing that he didn't even notice her existence, she sneered and swung her sharp bone sword. Because Hannibal had used too much strength, her sword was covered in a layer of sharpness. She swung it mercilessly at Dustless's head. Voidwalkers were cruel and violent, and Hannibal was no exception to her enemies. Clang clang clang, dazzling sparks splashed in the air. Hannibal was stunned. Her eyes widened as she looked at Dustless in a daze. You caught my slash with your bare hands? Harabel said in shock, her voice trembling. Dustless Eagle's bony little hand easily grabbed her sharp, serrated blade. It was as easy as grabbing a fire stick. It was exceptionally easy. How is this possible? He's just the captain of the Grim Reaper. Logically speaking, a Vasto Lord should be stronger than a captain-level Grim Reaper. But why is this happening now? Hannibal muttered to herself in disbelief. Due to the excessive shock, her proud snowy peaks were undulating, swaying at a soul-stirring angle. Looking at the calm Dustless, Hannibal realized that her brain, which she usually relied on, was not enough today. Looking at his cold eyes, Hannibal suddenly realized that she had returned to the time hundreds of years ago, becoming an insignificant void of the lowest level. Gulp. Hannibal made a rare noise. Then, her beautiful eyes shone with a fierce light. The haze was swept away, and the strength in her hand increased by several times. She thought that she could cut off Dustless's arm, but what happened next killed her. Crack, 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 a crisp cracking sound followed. Obviously, Helibel's unreserved attack had dealt a blow to her optimism. However, Helibel was not happy. "I'm sorry for breaking your weapon," Dustless said apologetically as he looked at the crack on the white weapon. The cracked bone weapon was the great sword that had accompanied Helibel for many years. "What kind of monster is this guy?" Seeing that, Helibel immediately retreated in a flash. She stared at Dustless's fist in disbelief. She was stunned. Even with her mental fortitude, she could not help but be stunned by such a shocking scene. She lost her mind and thought, "Vastolord? Do you think that will change anything? In my eyes, Jillian and Vastolord are the same. It's meaningless." Vastolord was indeed able to crush the captain, but he had to know who he was dealing with first. If it was a veteran captain like Unohana Lai or Old Man Yamamoto, the one being crushed would be a great void like Vastolord. "I once chased East Deity Yao out of Soul Society. His strength far surpasses yours. Do you know what this means?" Dustless sneered and continued, "He only sent you to test me. It's best if you can kill me, but it's fine if you can't. At most, you'll be killed. You're just a pawn anyway. Not only you, but the other great voids and the so-called Vastolord are all pawns. Right now, you belong to the category of being abandoned." Chapter 10:13. Hearing this, Helibel stared at Dustless. She did not mention anything about Aizen and East Sensei. "Little girl, do you think I don't know who the mastermind is? Naive." Dustless could not help but laugh. Ordinary people might not know, but he was an invader from the third dimension. He knew everything about Aizen, East Sensei, and Jin Ikimar. "Remember, I'm not an abandoned pawn. Otherwise, that lord would have killed me long ago," Helibel said coldly. Her tone was firm. She believed Aizen and the others. Pfft. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but laugh. He mocked, "Idiot, don't you understand the situation? You're just sending yourself to death. This is called borrowing someone else's knife to kill someone." Done talking, Dustless turned into a gale and wreaked havoc out. A violent storm rolled up behind him, and he instantly disappeared without a trace. So fast. Helibel's pupils constricted as she felt a fatal threat. At the same time, she was furious. Dustless had charged over so openly. Clearly, he did not take her seriously. Just like the provocation just now, in Dustless's eyes, Vastolord was Jillian. "I'll play with you until the end. Let's see how strong you are." Golden spiritual pressure erupted as Helibel unhesitatingly returned to her blade. The difference between them was too great. She could only use her trump card to deal with Dustless. Conquer him, Emperor Mermaid Empress. After returning to her blade, Helibel was clearly different from before. Her aura skyrocketed, and a terrifying tide of energy flowed out of her body. It was endless, wave after wave, like an endless sea. Then, something even stranger happened. Crack, crack, crack. Icy spiritual pressure swept out, freezing everything in its path. With Helibel as the center, everything within a few hundred meters turned into a land of ice. "This kind of trick. Don't use it on me again." With a stern expression, Dustless gathered light under his feet, and he fiercely landed. Lightspeed kick. Boom, boom. With a loud boom, the ground around them trembled violently, and cracks appeared without any pattern. The ice continent that Helibel had painstakingly created was instantly turned into nothing. "This guy, what kind of monster is he?" Helibel's expression was abnormally ugly. Her face was covered in frost, and she was surrounded by cold air. She was like a goddess that had walked out of ice and snow, isolated from the world. Even a docile sheep would fly into a rage after being repeatedly slapped in the face by someone, not to mention that Helibel was a ferocious shark. "This is the price for infuriating me." With a shout, Helibel aimed her Zanpakuto at Dustless. The Ryatsu in her body was affected by Aizen's brainwashing, surging like a surging river. Helibel was furious, and desperately injected spiritual pressure from his body into the Zanpakuto. Buzz buzz buzz. The dense spiritual pressure gathered on the Zanpakuto, and the entire blade was shining. It trembled slightly and emitted a clear sound as it was enveloped by the high-density spiritual pressure. Die! With a cold expression, Hannibal remembered what Dustless had done. She raised her Zanpakuto and mercilessly swung it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A huge golden slash whizzed out, and anything that stood in its way was annihilated under this blade. It carried Hannibal's hatred as it slashed toward Dustless. Vasto Lord, you're not strong, but you have quite the temper. With a contemptuous smile, Dustless used an unparalleled move with a snap of his fingers. Hado 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. The same golden flash shot out, leaving a straight afterimage in the sky. Idiot, you want to cancel out my move? Although you can do it, Hado 63 is too weak. The difference between the two of us is like heaven and earth. Hannibal sneered. She had fought with the Grim Reaper before, so she had some understanding of Kido. To cancel out her attack, one would need at least Hado 90 and above. Looking at Dustless, Hannibal's lips twitched, and she was about to give him a good beating. What happened next made her view of the world collapse instantly. Boom boom boom. A deafening explosion came from the sky, and the dark night sky shone brightly for a moment. Looking up, two powerful moves intertwined. Hannibal's attack was obviously at a disadvantage, and it was forcefully torn apart by the golden sphere. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air came, and the aura of death rushed toward her. Hannibal's eyes widened as she saw the golden sphere coming toward her. How is this possible? How did this guy do it? The Hado 63 of the other Grim Reapers would have a hard time destroying the steel skin of a greater void like Vasto Lord. Hannibal, who was shocked, immediately flicked out a ray of light that could destroy the world. Wang Su's flash. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in the void, followed by a blinding light that could be seen from 1,000 meters away. The temperature in the affected area increased by hundreds of times, and even the spiritual pressure in the atmosphere was evaporated, and there was a danger of suffocation. Hannibal used her strongest void flash to cancel out Dustless's move. Do you understand now? Dustless asked indifferently without attacking, and the spiritual pressure in his body suddenly calmed down. What do you mean? Hannibal, who was panting, asked in an unfriendly manner. This woman looks like she still doesn't understand. No wonder she was used by Aizen. She's so slow that she doesn't even have a bottom line. Dustless complained in his mind, and then said seriously, I told you before, you're just sent to die. The difference in our strength is just like before. In the end, you are just an abandoned pawn to test me. Chapter 10:14. Hannibal was so angry at Dustless that her cheeks turned red, her blonde hair standing on end, and her eyes spitting fire. Shut up, Hannibal said gloomily, filled with murderous intent. However, Dustless was the kind of person who didn't know what was good for him. The more Hannibal didn't want to listen to Dustless's verbal attacks, the more he shouted. Aizen-e-sensei, and those three idiots, Ikamaru-jin, they are all, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without waiting for Wu Chen's voice to fall, several sharp lights that wanted to pierce through him and destroy him attacked him like a rainstorm. Boring, Dustless glanced at them and closed his eyes. A transparent wall formed. Bakudo 81, sky shattering. Bang bang bang. It was just a transparent wall as thin as a cicada's wing, but it was like two different worlds. Dustless from the other world couldn't even touch it. It was impossible to shake him. This guy's strength is unreliable. It's hard to make any substantial progress with his attacks that are all bark and no bite. Hannibal had a headache. She used to think about what an invincible enemy looked like. Now, she finally had a clearer understanding. This narrow-minded man who liked to scold others and speak ill of others was a living specimen. You seem to be very difficult to deal with? That's true. Seeing Hannibal's confusion, Dustless smiled and teased, if you are willing to lower your head and be my spy, and snatch the half of Hogyoku from East Deity Zhao, I can let you go reluctantly. You want me to be a traitor? What nonsense are you talking about? Hellebel said stubbornly. Her tone was as calm as a mountain, as if she was saying that even if she had to die, she would die together with Dustless. Eisen's method of training his subordinates is truly admirable. Seeing this, Dustless nodded. He could naturally hear the hidden meaning in Hellebel's tone. Not to mention retreat, there was no room for negotiation. Wang Su's flash. Her slender fingers flickered and trembled. With a command, a golden beam of light covered the sky and earth. The demonic halo destroyed all living things. Everything in the world couldn't withstand a single blow from this beam of light. If a god blocked it, it would kill a god. If a Buddha blocked it, it would kill a Buddha. Stubborn. Seeing this, Wu Chen directly rushed out. He didn't attack or defend at all. He simply turned into a rainbow light and went forward as if he was courting death. Boom boom boom. Dustless, who rushed into the sky, disappeared, and his Ryatsu also disappeared permanently, as if he was blasted into nothingness. Ha! An intoxicating laughter burst out from Hellebel's red lips as she muttered to herself, Wang Su's flash without any defense, even Eisen, Sama. But before she could be pleased with herself for a few seconds, Dustless's eccentric cocky voice directly petrified her. Sorry, I'm not Eisen. I don't know if he'll be hurt, but I definitely won't be hurt. Countless photons gathered from all directions, flashing and reforming. A handsome young man appeared, his pure white captain's feather as clean as snow. His messy hair danced in the wind, and a frivolous smile hung on his lips. He had a playful attitude toward the world. Seeing this, Hellebel spat out blood. He was hit by Void Flash, but he was unharmed. I'm the Flash. It's just a void flash, the light of a firefly. It's easier said than done to touch me. His indifferent eyes looked down at Hellebel, shooting out a cold light. Dustless lost his playful mood. He sensed that something was wrong. Even now, the expeditionary army had disappeared without a trace. I'll ask you one last time. Where is that bastard from East Senpai? His right hand was as terrifying as a black hole, instantly collecting a large amount of photons. The blinding light made Hellebel unable to open her eyes. She could only cover her eyes with her hands. I don't know. Through the gap between her fingers, Hellebel said without hesitation. The moment she said that, Dustless threw out the light in his hand coldly. Yasakani no Magatama. So. The light bullets that filled the sky rumbled down. The densely packed number of light bullets caused one's soul to tremble. 1, 2, 3. Facing this ridiculous number, Hellebel became more and more desperate as she counted. Her heart was cold and she felt powerless. Boom boom boom. Hellebel unleashed her remaining Ryatsu without holding back. She knew that if she didn't do anything, the light bullets would turn her into a sieve. Puchi. The powerful water flow overflowed from the sawtooth Zanpakuto and filled the sky in just a few breaths. Broken waterfall. With a command, the water flow in the sky came back to life and was given a special power. It changed according to Hellebel's will, turning into a thick water pillar that blocked all the incoming light. Invading this huge water pillar, the light in the sky seemed to have stepped into a gravity field and could no longer move forward. Vasto Lord Class Large Void. You have such a powerful ultimate move? I can't deny that I underestimated you before. Squinting his eyes into a slit, Wu Chen looked at the oncoming water column and sighed softly. The entire sky suddenly turned solemn. In order to repay you for opening my eyes, I will show you a little bit of my strength. Dustless's slightly magnetic voice was like the will of the heavens, connected to the will of the heavens, dominating the world. Soon after, the entire sky began to undergo a shocking change. An ominous, deathly stillness began to spread. The entire Hueco Mundo was silent, giving Hellebel the illusion that she had teleported to another time and space. In this strange field, everything was cold to her, and the entire world was her enemy. Chapter 10:15. Hellebel was shocked. This was a feeling she had never felt before. Be it an illusion or an illusion, it was unforgettable. It left an indelible impression in her heart. Then the earth trembled. Violent tremors swept out like a tidal wave. Hannibal was shocked to discover that an unprecedented colossus was standing in Hueco Mundo. What the hell is that? Death's Bankai? Her fluctuating tone was filled with fear. Hannibal felt defeated like never before. No, it was definitely not as simple as seeing a ghost. At the very least, Hannibal believed that she could fight or even destroy a so-called ghost if she encountered one. However, the towering figure in front of her made her feel as tiny and powerless as a grain of sand. She looked up at Dustless, or rather, at the entire sky. Because Dustless represented the entire sky at this moment. The super monster behind him occupied Hannibal's entire eyeball. There was no such thing as the sky. There was only Dustless and the giant Buddha behind him. The entire world was under his control. This is the end. With a soft murmur, Wuchen suddenly let out a roar. Immortal technique, would release, true thousand hands, avatar above head. The colossal figure hidden in the darkness revealed its ferocious appearance. The giant Buddha formed by countless giant Buddhas dragged its body forward. The earth kept shaking as if there was an earthquake. Looking at the oncoming water column, Dustless felt that it was incomparably huge before. Now, it felt like a tiny insect that could be destroyed with a snap of his fingers. Get out of my way! As Dustless' voice fell, the giant Buddha behind him immediately responded, venting out Dustless's anger. Boom boom boom, tens of thousands of arms blasted out in unison. The endless number of arms came wave after wave, causing a devastating blow to anyone. It would have been fine if the individual arms were weak. Who would have thought that every arm that flew out would be extremely powerful? When they landed on the ground, they would cause violent tremors and deep craters. The entire Hueco Mundo was smashed until it was like the surface of the moon. Bam 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 bam, attacked by the fist shadows that filled the sky, the giant water column that was showing off was instantly shattered. It turned into a downpour that nourished the dried-up Hueco Mundo. My strongest move is actually so weak? Hannibal stared blankly at the bursting water. She was completely drenched. Her beautiful eyes were dull and had lost their usual luster. Now it seemed that Dustless had been playing with her all this while. What kind of stupid thing have I done to cause such a beautiful little girl to have a mental breakdown? I'm really a sinful person. Dustless sat on the head of the giant Buddha and said apologetically. You bastard! Ling, who had not spoken to Dustless for many years, could not help but jump out and say, if you really don't want to hurt her, you should just kill her. Hearing this, Wuchen shook his finger and said with pity, kill her in seconds? How could I bear to do that? I'm not a ruthless person. Ling almost vomited blood. She's also struggled and worked hard. In order to reach Vasto Lord's level, she sacrificed hundreds of years. If I kill her without a word and don't give Hannibal a chance to show herself, it's too unfair. Dustless explained as if it was the right thing to do. Ling's tone twitched as she scolded, you little brat, you're really shameless. You're clearly, in the end Ling was speechless. She found herself speechless. Dustless's words were obviously twisted logic, but she could not find a suitable reason to refute. Killing someone without giving them a chance to spread their wings was indeed too cruel and heartless. Young girl, do you still want to resist? Dustless asked softly as he landed beside Hannibal. Resist? Hannibal raised her despondent eyes. Even though Dustless was right in front of her and she could reach him with her hands, but looking at the giant Buddha behind her, the Dustless in front of her was so far away that she could not touch him. I've said before that you're an abandoned pawn. Do you understand now? Dustless sat on the ground lazily. The chakra and spiritual pressure in his body had all calmed down, and the giant Buddha behind him had also disappeared. He stared at Hannibal and asked. Hannibal fell silent. When East Sensei wanted to send her here, she said that Dustless was just an ordinary captain. Based on the current situation, the ordinary captain that East Sensei said was not worth mentioning was now more than 100 times stronger. Moreover, Dustless's leisurely and uninteresting appearance clearly showed that he was not using his full strength. Damn East Sensei, Hannibal, who understood, gritted her teeth and cursed. She clenched her fists tightly and the veins bulged. Her entire body was filled with negative emotions that made one's scalp numb. Then, she remembered East Sensei and Aizen Sosuke, as well as Jin Ikemaru's shocking strength. A bitter, self-deprecating smile appeared on Hellable's face, and she immediately deflated. She was instantly killed by Dustless. She was also instantly killed by the three of them. Moreover, she was now Dustless's captive. It's done. Seeing this, Dustless laughed inwardly. He cleared his throat and said loudly, "As long as you follow me, I can help you take revenge at some point in the future." Dustless's words made Hellable see the light of dawn again. Her unfocused eyes once again became bright and spirited. Not only that, his tone was deep and filled with endless magic. Hellable also seemed to be possessed. Following Dustless's thoughts, she continued to throw out bait and said, "In the future, I can help you take off the mask on your body. What Aizen Sosuke can do, I can do the same. I can even do it more perfectly than him. It's flawless." Chapter 10:16. Dustless tempted. If Hellable wanted revenge, she had to rely on him and rely on Dustless's power to take revenge on Aizen. Whether it was a hollow or a Shinigami, they were creatures that clearly distinguished kindness and hatred. As long as they were tempted when they were at their weakest, the success rate would be 100%. No problem. After thinking for a while, Hellable knelt on one knee to show her loyalty. "Get up." Dustless smiled faintly. This was within his expectations. If someone who had always trusted him suddenly betrayed him, no matter who it was, it would be unforgettable. "Go back to East Sensei Lord for the time being," Dustless said after thinking for a while. "You want to let him go?" Hellable was disappointed. She thought Dustless would kill East Sensei Lord, but his tone showed that he didn't want to kill East Sensei Lord. "I can understand your feelings, but, hee. Dustless laughed sinisterly. "If Aizen and East Sensei betrayed you, killing them would be too easy. You can use the same method to take revenge. If you do the first thing, I'll do the 15th. This wasn't too much, it was just reciprocity. "That's right, good idea." Seeing this, Hellable nodded her head in agreement with Dustless's words. For example, when Aizen completes the Hogyoku, he stealthily stole it. Dustless smiled mischievously, as if he could already see Aizen's face turning green. The Hogyoku was more important to Aizen than his life. "Then what's the next step of my plan? Accompany you to Soul Society?" Hellable asked expectantly. She was excited to enter the birthplace of a Shinigami as a hollow. "I'm a Shinigami, I can't bring you to Soul Society." It was impossible to bring a grand hollow like Vasto Lord back to Soul Society, and Dustless still needed Hellable to spy on East Sensei Lord. "I understand, my lord," Hellable said respectfully. She had a serious expression on her face. "My lord?" Just the sound of this word is annoying. Dustless's face was filled with displeasure when he heard this, and then he waved his hand and said bluntly, "Don't call me lord, just call me." Frowning, Dustless felt particularly gloomy. All the subordinates who had addressed him as lord had left him in the end. It was so shameful that they had betrayed him. Dustless had a shadow in his heart. "What's that called?" Hellable asked curiously, blinking her eyes. "Just call me young master." After pondering for a while, Dustless revealed a faint smile. It was just a form of address. It was fine as long as it wasn't that so-called lord. "Speaking of which, did you kill all of the expeditionary army?" Dustless suddenly changed the topic and asked. Hearing this, Hellable shook her head and denied it. "Young master is my main target. The expeditionary army is just an accompaniment. It doesn't matter if I killed them, and it doesn't matter if I didn't kill them. They are all cannon fodder anyway, insignificant characters." Dustless's tightly knitted brows immediately relaxed after hearing Hellable's words, and he felt relieved. He originally thought that the heavenly shell-embroidered Hellable had secretly colluded with East Sensei Lord, but now it seemed that he had been overthinking. What is East Sensei Lord doing with that old fellow? Let me guess, he must be experimenting with Aaroncore like crazy. Dustless completely ignored Helibal's existence and continued guessing. Helibal nodded and said, "He has indeed been experimenting with Arancore on a large number of occasions recently. A few of the disobedient Ajuchas were executed by him, and, at this point, Helibal paused and thought for a while. And many of the Arancore failed and became sacrificial lambs. Due to the pressure brought by Dustless, East Sensei Lord had been experimenting with Arancore. Forget it, wait until I get Urahara Kisuke's half of the Hogyoku, then I will deal with East Sensei." Lazily lying on the sand, Dustless made a decision. East Sensei Lord's idiot was not Sosuke Aizen. He was thousands of miles away from Aizen's intelligence, and it was not reliable to rely on him to complete the Hogyoku. Since East Sensei Lord did not have the ability to complete it, Dustless could only do it himself. Perhaps Urahara Kisuke did a good job of keeping it a secret. Until now, Sosuke Aizen, Jin Ikamaru, and East Sensei Lord did not know that Urahara Kisuke had another Hogyoku. Go and keep an eye on East Sensei Lord's kid. If he does anything suspicious, immediately report to me." Dustless ordered Helibal. With a flash of light in his eyes, Dustless suddenly stood up. "Master, are you planning to leave Hueco Mundo?" Helibal asked. Dustless slowly nodded, his face filled with hostility. At first, he said that he was going on an expedition to Hueco Mundo, but in fact, he was fooling the people of Soul Society. His real purpose was to secretly go to the modern world after reaching Hueco Mundo. The only thing in the modern world that attracted Dustless was Urahara Kisuke's Hogyoku. "Right," Wu-Chun said abruptly as he stared at Helibal. Embarrassment flashed across his face. "I still need you to prepare the Black Passage to the modern world for me." The Shinigami was not a void, and it was impossible to tear space to reach the modern world. He could only rely on the World Crossing Gate, and Dustless's trip was only between Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. Soul Society did not prepare a World Crossing Gate to the modern world for him. Helibal glanced at Dustless strangely, then did as she was told. This was a trivial matter for a void, but for a Shinigami, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Especially for a top void like Helibal, Vasto Lord, it was easy for her to tear space, but the Shinigami could not do it. Whether it was going to Hueco Mundo or the modern world, he needed to go through the World Crossing Gate. Chapter 1017. Although Helibal wondered what Dustless was doing in Hueco Mundo, she also shut up. A talkative subordinate asking something that shouldn't be asked will cause trouble. Huts inside the black cavity, there was an untimely sigh. In the darkness, the outline of a person walking slowly was clearly visible. The white face was sharp and angular, and the clear eyes were like the stars in the night sky, particularly dazzling and charming. Urahara Kisuke will definitely not hand over the Hogyoku. Dustless, who knew Urahara Kisuke, secretly said. He couldn't even hide it, let alone hand it over to Dustless. Kaka. The void broke, and Dustless poked his head out of the black cavity, looking down at the crowded land and the distant sky. Although the air pollution was very serious, he had lived in Soul Society for many years, and it felt good to suddenly change to the modern world. Who is it? The unfriendly burst was full of vigilance, several figures rushed out of the air, and they all pulled out their Zanpakuto. Those who come out of the black cavity are generally Great Void, members of the 10th Division. Looking at these Shinigami one by one, Dustless suddenly understood which division they were in. He vaguely remembered that the task of guarding the modern world seemed to be the responsibility of the 10th Division. Captain Haori. Looking at Dustless in surprise, several members of the 10th Division looked at each other and put down their Zanpakuto. Something is wrong, it's strange. Captain should have used the World Crossing Gate to come to the modern world. This seems to belong to the Great Void. Soul Society hasn't said that there will be a captain coming to the modern world recently. The members of the 10th Division whispered and looked at Dustless puzzledly. If it weren't for the Captain Haori, they would have killed him with their Zanpakuto. Only Great Void can come out of the black cavity, this is an unchangeable iron law. Glancing at several people, Dustless quietly spread his observation haki. After noticing that there was no one around, Dustless quietly asked, "Are there only a few of you patrolling the modern world?" "This is as you can see." Among them, the death god who was clearly the leader stepped forward and said, "Baal Egan died a few days ago, and the entire Hueco Mundo fell into the struggle for the king of Hueco Mundo, so the number of greater voids that invaded the modern realm has decreased. Currently, there are only a few of us. That's for the best. It saves me the trouble of searching for the other members." Dustless's eyes flickered with red light as he spoke in a very strange manner. "What do you mean, Captain Wuchen?" The members of the 10th Division were confused and didn't understand what was going on. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of a saber being drawn stunned everyone. As they looked at Dustless, who was brimming with killing intent, they instinctively felt that something was wrong. "This blade of mine is called the first-generation Ghost Blade. If it doesn't kill for a few days, it will feel uncomfortable." Dustless whispered as he pointed at the first-generation Ghost Blade's demonic blade. As soon as he finished speaking, first-generation Guiche let out a clear cry, full of desire. So, Dustless's eyes emitted a cold glint as he condensed a wisp of spiritual pressure on his blade. He then roared, "Let me borrow your heads." Pucci. A spiritual pressure slash emerged from the tip of the saber, instantly killing several people and separating their heads from their bodies. What was even more sinister was that first-generation Ghost Blade's slash was filled with some kind of mysterious energy that annihilated their corpses. Boom, boom, boom. Due to the excessive strength of the slash, the ground also shook and was torn into a long and narrow abyss. The huge vibration could be felt several kilometers away. "If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for seeing me." Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at the place where the few people disappeared. Then looking down at the torn ground below, Dustless pondered, "You made such a big noise, even if I don't have to look for you, you should come to my door." Kongzucho is not very big, but it's not small either. Dustless doesn't have the time to look for Urahara Kisuk's group in the vast sea of people. "Are they here?" A few minutes later, Dustless's eyes splashed and his eyes swept straight to the northern sky. "Originally, I just wanted to attract Urahara Kisuk. Although he came, he also brought a group of uninvited guests. The scene a few kilometers away was unobstructed. In addition to Urahara Kisuk, there was also the masked legion and a wheat-skinned figure, PE of the Four Maple Court. 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 1 kilometer. Until the distance was only 100 meters, less than a minute had passed. Bang, bang, bang. There were several explosions in the sky in succession, and nearly 10 figures suddenly stood in the sky. Everyone's eyes were directed at Dustless, their faces unfriendly and indifferent. Alala, they actually caused such a big commotion. The head captain of Soul Society will be furious. No one can withstand that lord's temper. Urahara Kisuk took the lead to break the dull deadlock and pretended to be afraid. "I'm sure the head captain will understand my difficulties. The modern realm is much more crowded than the Soul Society. If I don't create a big commotion to attract all of you here, it'll take forever for me to find it by myself." His eyes swept across everyone, and when it fell on Lisa Yasadamaru, Dustless's mouth curled into a mocking smile. He had a deep impression of this girl who liked to read pornographic books. Even so, he just glanced at her, and his eyes finally fell on Urahara Kisuk. "I don't want to say anything unnecessary. This visit to the modern world is the captain's idea." Bringing up the shiny signboard of Old Man Yamamoto, Dustless said, "You must have heard about East Sage's defection to Soul Society, as well as the fact that he controlled both the Void and the Shinigami's power at the same time. The reason is that mysterious bead." Urahara Kisuk's face sank. He heard the other meaning in Dustless's words. When manager Urahara was in Soul Society, he also developed that kind of thing. "The captain hopes that you can call him out, and I will leave. If you resist, according to the captain's orders, I can only annihilate all of you." Chapter 10:18. Manager Urahara also developed that kind of thing when he was in Soul Society. The head captain hopes that you can call him out, and I will leave. If you resist, according to the head captain's order, I can only annihilate all of you." These words immediately caused everyone to be stunned, and they all glared at Dustless. "You don't seem to understand the situation. You are the one who is surrounded." Within the massed army, there were dissatisfied voices filled with ridicule and disdain. They deliberately raised their voices, and it was filled with endless sarcasm and ridicule. Dustless looked at the source of the voice, and a blonde girl suddenly appeared in front of him. She looked beautiful and arrogant, and Dustless recognized her. She was the second in command of the massed army, Ri Shiori. Hirako Masako, who usually disagreed with Ri Shiori, was now silent, and he silently agreed with Ri Shiori's actions. "You are just a little kid who hasn't grown up yet. You are not tall, but you have a bad temper. I don't want to argue with you." Dustless looked away, and he directly looked at Urahara Kisuke and threatened, "From now on, you only have 5 minutes. Everything is up to you." Dustless then closed his eyes, and his mind started to wander. "Bastard, how dare you ignore me?" Seeing this scene, Ri Shiori, who had a bad temper, roared and rushed out of the team. Hirako Masako also pretended not to see it, and let Ri Shiori do whatever she wanted. "Be careful, Ri Shiori, this guy is not normal. He is definitely not an ordinary captain." Lisa looked at Dustless with fear, and said with a serious face, "I have fought with her before, and she is very strong. According to my personal guess, besides the head captain, this bad boy with a wicked smile is the weirdest in the Godii 13. Bad boy with a wicked smile? Hearing this, Dustless opened his eyes, and his face was gloomy, and he shouted loudly, "Which family is this little kid from? You haven't even grown any hair. There is no place for you to talk here. Crawl back home and sleep. Drink more milk and eat less snacks so you can grow taller." Dustless's words immediately ignited Ri Shiori, who was a powder keg. He opened his mouth and a huge flash appeared. Void flash. Bush, bush. The crimson light swept through the heavens and the earth, crushing toward Dustless in a mighty manner. It was unstoppable, and the energy fluctuations it emitted wanted to tear Dustless to pieces. She hated it when people called her short. A brat is indeed a brat. Since bickering doesn't work, he resorts to violence. Dustless stretched lazily and yawned. He smiled and said, "However, I'm an all-rounder. I'm good at bickering and I'm second to none when it comes to violence." The spiritual pressure hidden in Dustless's body began to roar and surge. He was not afraid at all as he looked at the incoming void flash. His clear eyes flashed with a thick sneer. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. Bush, bush. A flash of light far denser than Void Flash whistled through the air, streaking across the sky and heading straight for Void Flash. Everyone thought that the two equally powerful attacks would cancel each other out. However, what happened next greatly exceeded their expectations. There was no such thing as a countermeasure. The battle was one-sided. The dazzling light cut through the thistles and thistles, crushing Void Flash with overwhelming power. Void Flash, who had high hopes, was torn apart. They were not in the same dimension. The members of the massed army looked at each other in disbelief. They looked at the calm Dustless in disbelief. "Manager Urahara, you don't have time to be surprised. There are only about 4 minutes left." Dustless said coldly. He was decisive and dismissive. He was just a child who hadn't grown up. "As far as I know, the head captain didn't give such an order." Urahara Kisuke wondered. "Nonsense, because I made it up. What the hell do you know?" Dustless laughed in his heart, but on the surface he continued to say seriously, "Such a secret mission, if a defected captain like you knows about it, isn't all the secrets of Soul Society equivalent to being exposed to the world?" Urahara Kisuke raised his eyebrows. His eyes flashed. "Kisuke, don't hand over that thing for the time being. If he's with Aizen, then we'll be setting ourselves on fire." Yusuke Urahara analyzed calmly. Urahara Kisuke agreed. His first impression of Dustless was that he was ambitious. "You bastard, look here." Ri Shiroi pointed at Dustless and cursed, "I'll let you know the consequences of underestimating me." You're alone, but we're a team. Who's at an advantage? I don't need to tell you. After a triumphant laugh, Ri Shiroi said with exultation. After we capture you, we can exchange Soul Society's captured Hiroyuki Rokuro. Ri Shiroi's tone took a sharp turn. The way he looked at Dustless changed drastically. He changed from being loyal to him to being overbearing. Hiroyuki Rokuro? So that's how it is. You're after him. It's a good idea, but it's a pity. He's already been killed by Ise-sensei. His soul has been integrated into the semi-finished Hogyoku. Your wish is destined to fail. Dustless said with a slight smile. Soul Society dares to kill a captive. Hirako Shinko's eyes were filled with een energy. His Zanpakuto shook. The whole world began to change. It was like a dream world. What does it have to do with me? Facing the gaze of the masked legion, Dustless's performance was mediocre. It was Aizen and Jin who captured Hiroyuki Rokuro. It was also Ise-sensei who integrated his soul into the Hogyoku. It had nothing to do with Dustless. Chapter 1019. Urahara Kisuke pondered, and the words of Four Maple Court echoed in his mind. He sincerely agreed, and the half-finished Hogyoku that was about to be taken out in his right hand was stuffed back into his clothes. Such an inexplicable person, just because of the head captain's order, it's too childish to give him Hogyoku. Moreover, it was still worth investigating whether the so-called head captain's order was real or fake. Perhaps it was just a rumor. Yisen, you're right. We really can't give Hogyoku to this man, he's very dangerous. Just like you said, his origin is mysterious, maybe he's Aizen's accomplice. Urahara Kisuke pulled out his Zanpakuto and expressed his position. Clang, clang. Seeing this, Dustless also pulled out his first-generation Onikak. The scene was full of gunpowder, and a battle was about to begin. Is he going to resist to the end? I really don't know where his confidence comes from. We have so many people, and our strength is around the captain level, but this kid is so calm and indifferent. Seeing Dustless was as calm as a mountain, Hirako Shinko said in surprise. It's not good to fight, although it's a group of minions. After a long battle, Soul Society will notice sooner or later, and it will be bad if it causes unnecessary trouble. Ignoring the people of the masked legion, Dustless's eyes were fixed on Urahara Kisuke and Four Maple Court. Kid, you're crazy. Hirako Shinko was angry and said with a fake smile. He finally understood Ri Shiori's depressed mood just now. He was talking to others seriously, but the other party just glanced at him. The feeling of being looked down and ignored was unbearable for anyone. The Zanpakuto suddenly emitted a strange fragrance, and Hirako Shinko sneered. What a strange smell. Slightly smelling the rich fragrance floating in the air, Dustless's eyes were in a trance, and then the world in front of him changed dramatically. Fall, Kisuke. Hirako Shinko didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto, and the world in Dustless's eyes immediately turned upside down. Up and down, left and right, front and back, all directions were reversed. There's such an ability? It's amazing. Dustless nodded secretly, quite surprised. All the scenes in front of him were reversed, and Hirako Shinko, who was standing before, was also upside down. So that's how it is. It must be that the fragrance I smelled just now that interfered with my vision. After pondering for a moment, Dustless understood the cause and effect, and immediately praised, not bad, very interesting ability, illusionary Zanpakuto is very rare. Hearing this, Hirako Shinzi did not appreciate it. His expression turned cold, and he stepped out, crossing through space. Annoying Grim Reaper, disappear. The moment he reappeared, Hirako Shinko appeared in front of Dustless, and his Zanpakuto swept from the left. Sensing the bone-piercing aura, Dustless raised his eyelids slightly and raised his first-generation ghost blade in an orderly manner. A cold light slashed towards Hirako Shinko. Idiot! Seeing this, Taira Shinko sneered. The first-generation ghost blade pierced through his body, but he was unharmed. It was obvious that it did not hit him. With an arrogant smile on his face, Hirako mocked, "Your brain is indeed slow to react. In your eyes I am upside down." In other words, Dustless saw Hirako Shinko coming from the left, but he was actually on the right. Coming alone to challenge all of us? You don't know the difference between life and death. Go repent in hell. Hirako Shinko's Zanpakuto mercilessly slashed towards Dustless. Soul Society killed Hirako Shinko's close friend, and now it's time to kill Dustless. Blood for blood. Puchi. Blood splashed in the void, and the smile on Hirako Shinko's face froze. A piercing pain spread all over his body, and a long and narrow wound appeared on his chest. His flesh was torn open, and even his intestines could be seen. Are you dreaming? After a while, the absent-minded Hirako Shinko roared with blood in his mouth. His eyes suddenly looked at Dustless, and he was hit back by merciless flash. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. The bright light hit Hirako Shinko. His whole body was scorched, his consciousness fainted, and he was mercilessly bombarded, smashing a deep pit on the ground, leaving only a weak breath. Hirako Shinko was severely injured in just one blow. Can you confuse human vision? It's indeed a good ability. I forgot to say before, when I fight I rarely use my eyes. Observation haki spread like a tide, and everyone was accurately locked by Dustless. Hirako! You bastard, I'm going to kill you! Besiege him together! The masked legion roared at the sky, and their spiritual pressure was raised to the limit. A group of hungry wolves who hadn't eaten for many years rushed towards Dustless. Don't act rashly, come back quickly. Urahara Kisuke, who realized that something was wrong, quickly shouted, but he was ignored by the angry masked legion. They all used their strongest moves to attack Dustless. This is bad, we're completely passive. These guys should at least listen to me, I have a detailed plan. Urahara Kisuke smiled bitterly and couldn't help but feel a headache. Fetters are a double-edged sword, hurting others and hurting oneself. Once a teammate is injured, the potential of the body will burst out, but there is also a situation like now, where they all turn into berserk beasts, without reason. There is no need to make any plan. If he is at the same level as Sosuke Aizen, any plan is useless. If he is not as good as Aizen, we won't need a plan. I'm going too, Kisuke. Slightly tidying up her slender hair, 4 maple quartz Ichi shouted, instant open. The clothes behind her suddenly burst, revealing her smooth jade back, and a lot of spiritual pressure also overflowed. 4 maple quartz Ichi's incredible speed was beyond imagination, and she disappeared in the blink of an eye. Feelings are really deep, fetters are really great. Nowadays, it's popular to die in groups. Dustless secretly laughed and brandished his saber to welcome. Chapter 1020. Dustless held the first-generation ghost blade in his hand. Even if he still didn't have his own Zanpakuto, the strength of the Shinigami was enough to crush a generation. This speed, so abnormal. His pupils shrank, Dustless perceived a super-strong Ryatsu locking onto him, and the speed was extremely exaggerated. Even his observation haki couldn't capture the trajectory of the movement, and he could only feel a vague storm rushing toward him. Yi of the 4 Maple Court? Vaguely catching a short and delicate figure, Dustless calmed down. In the entire Soul Society, there are no more than 5 people who can reach this level of speed. Only Soi Fan, the captain of the 2nd Division, matches this figure with Yi of the 4 Maple Court. You came at the right time. You are Urahara Kisuke's weakness. After I catch you, Urahara Kisuke will obediently turn himself in and hand over the Hogyoku without me saying anything. With a decision in his heart, Dustless gave up the idea of using elementalization to avoid the attack and stood indifferently in the sky. You want to fight me head-on? Pretty boy, Captain, you have guts. Seeing that Dustless didn't dodge, Yi of the 4 Maple Court immediately raised her right arm and covered it with Ryatsu, condensing enough strength to smash a mountain. The moment the young fist blasted out, Dustless also raised his black arm. Boom, boom. At the place where Wu Chen stood, there was a deafening explosion. The spiritual seed flame was ignited out of thin air. The blazing temperature made everyone stop in their tracks and dare not approach. Even if I can't kill him, This kid will definitely be choked to death by the Ryatsu flame. Yi of the Four Maple Court raised her arm dramatically and announced her victory with a heroic smile. Damn it, is that the feeling just now? Is he really human? Is he made of iron? Holding her trembling right arm tightly, Yi of the Four Maple Court was shocked. Her right hand, which hit Dustless, was red and swollen. If she forced it just now, Yi of the Four Maple Court suspected that her entire hand bones would be broken. Boom, boom. A turbulent spiritual pressure hurricane wreaked havoc, and the burning spiritual seed flame in the void was instantly suppressed, revealing a handsome young man. His aura was steady, his clothes were bright, and his eyes were bright. His bright and spirited eyes showed that the fierce attacks of Four Maple Court's Yi were all useless and self-deceiving. Gulp. Choking with sobs, Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard looked even more gloomy. She was so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. She had hit Dustless with all her strength, but her opponent was safe and sound. Instead, she had almost lost an arm. Dustless's eyes turned cold as he scrutinized them. Flashes of light filled the sky as they rained down. Tao Breaker 91, Thousand Hands Bright Sky Cannon. The densely packed number of Tao Breaker was enough to stun anyone. Looking up, it was very different from the normal 91 Tao Breaker. It was almost as if it had formed a huge tide of energy. This fellow's attainment in the Ghost Tao is actually so terrifying. Urahara Kisuk sucked in a breath of cold air with lingering fear. He thought that his ghost path was second to none. Today, he witnessed such an exaggerated attack, and it was an eye-opener. There was always someone better than him. Urahara Kisuk looked around and shouted loudly, "Leave it to me. You guys wait for the right opportunity to subdue him." The captain-level spiritual pressure was boiling, and its intensity was far stronger than that of ordinary captains. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. After using more than a dozen Bakudo 81 in succession, Urahara Kisuk lowered his head and gasped for breath. His forehead was already covered in cold sweat. Using so many Bakudo at once, and they were all high-level ones, no one could withstand it. Boom, boom. The more effort, the greater the gain. Although the transparent defensive wall that they had painstakingly built was finally broken, it had also offset Dustless's attack. You actually blocked it? Then let's do it again. The spiritual pressure in Dustless's body surged again. With a wave of his hand, the world was filled with multicolored light, and a fatal threat descended on everyone's heart. Tao Breaker 96, 1/. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before Dustless could finish the word, "destroy the world," several figures surrounded him. You guys are really good at taking advantage of the situation. At least, it's not too late to attack after I finish this Tao Breaker. You really know how to take advantage of the situation. Dustless sighed. His arms and feet were subdued, and even a Zanpakuto was hanging over his head. The people of the masked legion had already surrounded Dustless so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Boy, don't think that I will kill you so easily. Looking at Hirako Masako on the ground, who almost died, Sarutobi's eyes were burning, and she shouted, "I will give you the same scars, and then destroy you." Hearing this, Dustless was indifferent. His observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a radius of 10 miles was visible at a glance. There is no one around, and there are only a few people left in front of me. This is easy, Dustless secretly said in his heart, and his face was covered with frost and a layer of ice. You still want to resist? Be sensible or I will kill you immediately. Feeling the violent spiritual pressure in Dustless's body, Sarutobi warned and waved her Zanpakuto in her hand, which was full of threat. You guys can come to die together. Your relationship is so deep that it makes people jealous. Looking around at the masked army, as well as Yi of the Four Maple Court, Dustless said with emotion. Sarutobi snorted and said, "We came to die? Understand the current situation. You are already a fish on the chopping board, and you still dare to talk nonsense." Waving her Zanpakuto, Sarutobi planned to teach Dustless a lesson. Everyone was angry, and no one noticed the faint smile on her mouth. Only Urahara Kisuke saw it clearly. Did this guy deliberately let himself be caught to lure the enemy? Urahara Kisuke was shocked and immediately hurriedly shouted, "Get away from him, he was deliberately subdued by you. The purpose is to lure you over." What a smart man. Unfortunately, it's too late. Taking a deep look at Urahara Kisuke in the distance, Dustless spat out cold air and said, "Dow Breaker 90, Black Coffin." Chapter 1021. Hearing Urahara Kisuke's reminder, everyone was stunned. When they were about to ask, a black demonic brilliance fell from the sky. They looked up at the sky at the same time, and the falling black light made their minds blank. Everyone was sweating for Dustless's madness, including Ri Shiori. This bastard, he actually used number 90 Hado to attack me? Staring at the expressionless Dustless, Ri Shiori felt a chill in his heart. A powerful enemy wasn't too scary, but a lunatic who didn't hesitate to perish together with the enemy, everyone would stay at a respectful distance. Retreat! With a shout, Ri Shiori turned into a rainbow light and retreated. The power of number 90 Hado is extraordinary. I heard that he has only been a Shinigami for half a year. It seems that he was not lucky to be the captain, but real strength. Looking at the light pouring down, Urahara Kisuke felt as if he fell into an ice cave, and his whole body was cold. Looking at Ii of the Four Maple Court, his eyes were full of despair. He knew that it was too late to escape. It happened so suddenly that everyone was destined to tremble under the nightmare of number 90 Hado. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The screams of flesh being cut into pieces were endless. The masked army suffered heavy losses. Everyone was dripping with blood, and their bodies were covered with hideous knife wounds. Bang bang bang. Everyone was like a kite with a broken string, and they fell powerlessly. Just like Hirako Shinko, they were killed in seconds. "I'm fine," Yi of the Four Maple Court said in surprise. She was trampled by the invisible knife of the Black Coffin, just now, but unexpectedly, she was safe and sound in the end. "Of course, you are my important bargaining chip, Missy." In the sky, there was a whisper, and warm light particles surged around. Immediately, under the shocked gaze of Urahara Kisuke and Yi of the Four Maple Court, Dustless's body automatically assembled. His face was like a knife, and there was no extra expression on his cold face. Urahara Kisuke and Yi of the Four Maple Court looked at each other, and a strange emotion rose in their hearts at the same time. They did not know why, but he was unscathed by any attack, and it turned from inconceivable to normal. It was not surprising that this thin figure could perform any miracle. Their minds were already numb. "Since I can't defeat him, I'll just seal him." A gust of chilly wind blew, and Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard stopped talking abruptly. Her body was covered by some kind of magic power, and she couldn't move. At the same time, 5 cold fingers grabbed her throat. "Don't act rashly, or I will kill you." The person who subdued Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard from behind was Dustless with a cold expression. "Hand over the Hogyoku, or I'll send her to heaven immediately." Dustless threatened as the stone in his heart landed safely. Hearing this, Urahara Kisuke's face turned ugly. He raised his voice and scolded, "You are the captain of Soul Society. How dare you threaten others with such despicable means? If you have the guts, let go of Miss Yi and fight me one-on-one." Even with Urahara Kisuke's temper, at this moment, he was furious. He scolded Dustless for being shameless, ruthless, and extremely shameless. Every captain of Soul Society was open and aboveboard. It was unheard of for a captain like Dustless to threaten others with a hostage. "Hand over the Hogyoku, don't consider my patience. If you provoke me, I will kill the woman as well," Dustless said impatiently with a cold tone. Urahara Kisuke's eyes flickered. After some consideration, he resolutely took out the Hogyoku. A shiny sphere was taken out from his clothes. At the moment when it appeared, Wu Chen's eyes stared straight, and there was a burning desire. This kind of artifact that could promote the host to evolve infinitely, everyone coveted and yearned for it. "Let go of Miss Yi first, or I will destroy it immediately. Don't even think about getting it. Urahara Kisuke threatened and raised the Hogyoku in his hand. Urahara Kisuke held it tightly as if the gorgeous gem would burst if he used a little force. Is that so? Dustless was unmoved and said indifferently, you can try to destroy it if you can. When the Hogyoku came out, Urahara Kisuke tried every means to destroy it, but in the end, it was futile. There was no way to destroy the Hogyoku. Urahara Kisuke was just bluffing Dustless. Seeing Dustless's stubbornness, Urahara Kisuke was speechless and had a headache. If I don't let you see how scary I am, you won't give in easily. Staring at Urahara Kisuke's face that never changed, Dustless sneered in his heart. He looked at Yi of Siphon Court in front of him, and his eyes flashed with havoc and teasing. Dustless tore the clothes of Yi of Siphon Court rudely. His hands went deep into her body and slowly touched her delicate skin. He also showed a satisfied expression, which stimulated Urahara Kisuke's nerves. Bastard, you are looking for death. Urahara Kisuke spat out a mouthful of old blood. His eyes turned scarlet, and his whole body was filled with murderous aura. For the first time in his life, he lost his mind. This kid actually took advantage of Yi in front of him. How could he swallow it? You want to fight with me? Seeing Urahara Kisuke's face changing colors, Dustless was very proud. When he was about to go further, Yi of Siphon Court suddenly said something that made Dustless's face turn black. Kisuke, don't worry about me. Quickly take the Hogyoku and leave. I will treat it as if I was bitten by a pig. Yi of Siphon Court was calm and said very casually. I have a lot of special hobbies. If you don't give me the Hogyoku, I will let her have a taste of what it means to beg for death. Dustless heard this and deliberately showed a wretched smile, which was very evil. Then he put his nose close to Yi of Siphon Court and sniffed the body fragrance of Yi of Siphon Court. His face was dull and his head was dizzy. He looked at Yi, who was sweating and almost fainted. F***ck, why is she so smelly? Chapter 1022. Although Wu Chen's voice was very soft, Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard heard it clearly. She immediately blushed and expressed that she was innocent. He couldn't blame her for sweating, right? But then the embarrassment in his heart was annihilated by the monstrous flame. After taking advantage of others, Wu Chen's face was full of disgust, as if he had been greatly insulted. Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard was instantly furious. Brat, when I have the chance, I will definitely kill you and humiliate you. He glared and warned fiercely. Dustless didn't even look at her. He was thinking of a countermeasure. He only yearned for the Hogyoku. If you know what's good for you, give it to me. Don't seek your own death. Dustless raised his voice and scolded. At the same time, he retracted his hand that was close to Yi's nose. She couldn't stand the stench of sweat. His hands continued to grope inside Yi's body and made exaggerated movements to provoke Urahara Kisuke. I have to calm down. He is doing this on purpose. I can't be fooled. Urahara Kisuke took a deep breath and reminded himself. The flames in his eyes gradually extinguished. He was like a monk who had no desires and no desires. This brat's willpower is so strong. He can still endure teasing his girlfriend. Dustless couldn't help but be stunned. He felt that it was unbelievable. If it was him, he would have already blasted Urahara Kisuke to smithereens. Don't compare Kisuke with an ordinary person like you. When Four Maple Courtyard's knight saw Urahara Kisuke's calm demeanor, he arrogantly said to Wu Chen, your despicable plan is far from enough to sway Kisuke's mentality. Dustless couldn't deny her words. He echoed, indeed, it's far from enough. Since you think I'm too kind, then I'll go even further. Dustless's eyes shot out the light of desire. He suddenly formed a seal with one hand and shouted, Shadow Clone Technique. Bang bang bang. A few figures that looked exactly like Dustless suddenly appeared. They were holding all kinds of tools in their hands. Video camera? Urahara Kisuke frowned as he looked at the shadow doppelgangers that suddenly appeared. Having lived in the modern world for decades, he was very clear about this kind of thing. Although she's a bit smelly, her skin is a bit darker, and her temper is a bit worse, she'll still be the same after a bit of adjustment, teaching and turning off the lights. Dustless's wolf-like eyes circled around of the four-maple courtyard. From time to time, he would let out a horrifying laugh. Urahara Kisuk's heart skipped a beat. He realized that something was wrong and asked with a livid face, "What do you want to do? It's useless to threaten me. It's best not to waste your energy." "Is that so?" Hearing this, Dustless looked at Urahara Kisuk playfully and immediately said to himself, "I heard that money is indispensable in this world. Unfortunately, I come from Soul Society, so I naturally don't have that kind of paper money. I don't want to go back to Soul Society recently, so it's inevitable to make some extra money." After saying that, Wuchen looked at Urahara Kisuk and then pretended to be wretched and said, "Although I'm the captain, I'm a law-abiding person. It's impossible for me to rob her, so I can only count on Miss Yori to cooperate with me to make some money. Don't you understand, Manager Urahara?" Hearing this, Urahara Kisuk frowned tightly. He really didn't understand Dustless's meaning. This despicable person is even more shameless than Aizen Sosuke. What is he planning? Urahara Kisuk's mood changed. He suddenly felt that the previous Aizen was too cute. At the very least, Aizen wouldn't do such a despicable and shameless thing. This scene seems to have been played in some TV series. A few people with cameras, a man with a wretched smile, and a weak girl who can make some extra money. Urahara Kisuk had a feeling of déjà vu. He scratched his head and looked at who was wearing revealing clothes, and a horrible thought flashed in his mind. "If you dare to do that, I will tear you into pieces." After thinking about what Dustless said, Urahara Kisuk's eyes were burning, and his whole body was trembling with anger. "You finally understand what I'm talking about. That's right, we're going to shoot an AV. I'm the male lead, so Yi can only be the female lead." Dustless admitted without hesitation, and then ordered the shadow clones, "When we shoot, remember to make sure I'm pixelated. But this stubborn girl can't be pixelated. Not only that, but we also need to change her camera to 800 pixels. Every part of her must be shot clearly to benefit the whole human race." "Understood." The shadow clones nodded and promised. "Bastard, I'll kill you." These words angered Urahara Kisuk. His body, which was standing in the sky, almost couldn't support himself and fell to the ground. "Bastard." Of the four-maple courtyard flew into a rage and roared word by word. He was so angry that his face turned red, and there was clear fear in his eyes. If Wu Chen really did that, it would be worse than killing her 10,000 times. You think this is over? People like me like to treat all kinds of stubborn people." Dustless sneered and then said bluntly, "After shooting, I will sell it to Soul Society. The passion of one of the four noble families in Soul Society. There must be a lot of people who are tempted." Urahara Kisuk and Yi of Saifeng's both vomited blood. Holding the Hogyoku in his hand tightly, Urahara Kisuk didn't dare to gamble. Even if Dustless was lying, he didn't dare to gamble. Otherwise, Yi of Saifeng's would definitely lose his reputation, be despised by everyone, and Saifeng's would become the laughing stock of the entire Soul Society. And Dustless with pixelated face would definitely be fine. Chapter 1023. Dustless smiled proudly, looking at the constipated Urahara Kisuk. He was in a particularly good mood. The most despicable way is often the most effective. For people like Urahara Kisuk, the simple oppression of force can't force him to surrender, only the most vulgar means will work. "Why, are you still going to insist, Miss Yori?" Dustless smiled frivolously, and even because his acting was too realistic, saliva overflowed from the corner of his mouth. It was very wretched, and Yori of the Four-Maple Court felt cold all over. Glancing at Urahara Kisuk, Yori of the Four-Maple Court fell silent. Still hesitating, Wu Chen sneered and shouted at the top of his voice, "Since that's the case, goodbye, Manager Urahara." After that, the void around Dustless began to distort and change. "Kamui!" A vortex began to slowly devour the bodies of Dustless and Yori of the Four Maple Court, and the latter half of their bodies gradually disappeared. Urahara Kisuk tensed up, and when Yori of the Four Maple Court disappeared, his nerves also tensed up. Until Yori of the Four Maple Court completely disappeared, he finally couldn't hold back. Take it. The shiny glowing ball was thrown out, and Dustless caught it very easily. At the same time, taking advantage of Dustless's distraction, Yori of the Four Maple Court broke free from the shackles. Is this Hogyoku? Dustless looked at the ball in his hand absent-mindedly, feeling the cool body temperature, and felt a little dry. Hogyoku is an extremely heaven-defying existence. As long as the host feels the threat of death and the will in his heart has been firm and unwilling to give up, it will continue to evolve, and there seems to be no limit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A strange wind and wave attracted Dustless's attention, and the sky was dark, and he was shocked to find that thousands of blades were aimed at him. Yes, I can use Hado number 91, so I can definitely use Hado number 90. Looking up at the falling cold light, Dustless muttered to himself. Urahara Kisuk snorted coldly, showing his murderous intent, and said hoarsely, Hogyoku is not so easy to take. If you want to take it, at least leave something for me. Immediately afterward, there was a loud roar, and the sky twisted. Tao Breaker's 90 black coffins. The sharp intersecting blades shone with cold light, and the center point was Dustless. Because of the Hogyoku, Dustless was distracted for a moment, so he was hit directly. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Dustless's complete body immediately had many cracks, but the effect was negligible. After a flash of light, Dustless recovered perfectly. That's fast, Dustless said in surprise. He had a new understanding of Urahara Ki's run-up ability. Not only him, but also Yi of the Four Maple Court and the Megami Corps that had been heavily injured before had all disappeared. His running speed made Dustless feel ashamed of his inferiority. Next, East Deity wants that half of the Hogyoku. If they are fused together, the perfect Hogyoku will be born. With his heart burning, Dustless also left Kongzucho. At the moment, in Urahara Kisuk's house, or the basement of his house. Two figures were busy panting, throwing all the Megami Corps into the hot spring carefully made by Urahara Kisuk to heal, and then they slept on the ground without caring about their image. This place was extremely special and hidden, and it could block the perception of Ryatsu. That kid must be talking nonsense. The head captain can't order him to seize the Hogyoku, and in such a rough and wretched way. Yi of the Four Maple Court blushed, thinking of Dustless's behavior and shameless remarks, and she was so angry that she saw stars. It's a pity to give the Hogyoku to that kid. Yi of the Four Maple Court said very dejectedly. Hearing that, Urahara Kisuk waved his hand. Not only was he not disappointed, but he also had a smile of success. Miss Yi doesn't need to care, that's not important. In any case, this matter is not bad for us. That guy took the Hogyoku, but it will cause a lot of trouble. Urahara Kisuk's eyes were full of wisdom, and he explained in a deep voice. If he can really give the Hogyoku to the head captain, it will be the best. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years is the strongest prison. No one can steal from the head captain. What if that kid keeps the Hogyoku for himself? After all, that kind of thing can break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, and everyone will be greedy. Yi of the Four Maple Court sighed and asked, thinking that Urahara Kisuk was comforting her. Even if he really wants the Hogyoku, it doesn't matter. We can tell this news to Sosuke Aizen, and let them kill each other. In addition, I have set a seal inside the Hogyoku, and it can be triggered at the right time. Urahara Kisuk explained confidently, and he was unusually calm. That's right, we can make him and Sosuke Aizen kill each other. Yi of the Four Maple Court's eyes were shining. She was very clear about Aizen's desire for the Hogyoku. Just now, Dustless made her feel extremely aggrieved, but she couldn't do anything about it. She was captured as a captive and was casually molested. Thinking about it, Yi of the Four Maple Court's cheeks became hot. Kakaka, the sky of Hueco Mundo distorted, and Dustless swept out, looking down at Hueco Mundo below, and flew straight over. Next is the half Hogyoku in East Sensei's hand. Landing on the ground, Dustless rushed in the direction of East Sensei. Originally, he hoped that Aizen would be able to take the Hogyoku, but it would take many years. Dustless didn't have time, so he could only do it himself. Combining Urahara Kisuke's Hogyoku with Aizen's Hogyoku, the real Hogyoku will be born. Chapter 1024. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo, and Four Maple Court's Night Cat also stepped into Soul Society. According to Urahara Kisuke's plan, he told Aizen Sosuke everything. Of course, Four Maple Court wasn't an idiot. If he told Aizen directly, it would arouse his suspicions. Instead, he used multiple channels to let Jin know, and then passed it to Aizen through Jin's mouth. Bang, bang, bang. In the dark laboratory, there was the sound of porcelain breaking, and there were more pieces of porcelain on the ground. So that's how it is. I thought Urahara was the only one who had the same idea as me. Who would have thought that there would be a stronger opponent on this thorny road? Aizen muttered to himself with an expressionless Sosuke as his spiritual pressure surged and he easily crushed the cup. Captain Aizen is angry? That's rare. Ikamaru Jin looked at the gloomy Aizen in surprise. He rarely got angry and he never showed his emotions. No one knew what Aizen was thinking. No, Captain Aizen is just happy. Ikamaru Jin caught the subtle smile on Aizen's face and shook his head to deny his previous thoughts. Being able to find an opponent is something to be excited about. Those days of being lonely at the top and looking down on all the other mountains are actually quite painful. Silver. Sosuke Aizen was very interested in this fight. He was always disappointed that he couldn't find an opponent. He thought that Urahara Kisuke would be able to compete with him. But who would have thought that Urahara Kisuke would be able to play with him? Urahara Kisuke left Aizen's sight forever. He ran to the outside world and hid like a mouse. God is really good to me, sending me another opponent, Aizen said in a low voice. He clenched his fists and looked at the sky, thanking the heavens. Captain Aizen. Seeing this, Ikamaru Jin couldn't help but stand up and remind them, we've fought with Captain Wu Qin many times, but it seems like we've been tricked by him every time. So far, we haven't taken advantage of him even once. So what, a momentary loss and victory doesn't mean anything. Sosuke Aizen's mouth twitched as he said calmly. Seeing how happy Aizen was, Jin had to remind him, East Sensei is still in Hueco Mundo, that guy is also in Hueco Mundo. If he catches us and finds Hogyoku. Speaking of this, Jin looked at Aizen Sosuke, waiting for him to make a decision. What's there to worry about? Isn't that great? Aizen wasn't angry. Instead, he looked forward to it. We've been researching hollows for almost 100 years, but we haven't made much progress. If Captain Dustless can create something that can break through hollows, then we'll have to thank him. Hearing this, the smile on Jin's face disappeared as he sensed the hidden meaning in Aizen's words. He said in surprise, Captain Aizen, are you going to ignore that guy? I don't think that's a good idea. If he takes away the Hengyu, our plan, which has been painstakingly planned for hundreds of years, will go down the drain. Jin, don't worry. Aizen's voice was soft and gentle, but his expression was frosty. Once he creates a perfect Hogyoku, we can take advantage of the situation. Even if he fails, I can still use Kyoka Suigetsu to control the Central Room 46 and order Soul Society to capture him. No matter what, victory is in our hands. We can just sit back and watch. Ikamaru Jin nodded in agreement. What about Captain East Sensei? Ikamaru Jin suddenly asked. The gap between East Sengoku and Dustless was too big. If they were to encounter each other, they would definitely be mercilessly suppressed and killed. You mean you want it? Sosuke Aizen narrowed his eyes, radiating a cold light as he said indifferently, it's up to the heavens to plan. Everyone's fate is the same. If East Sensei survives, it means he's blessed by God. If he's unfortunately killed, he can only blame himself for not being strong enough. His words determined East Sensei's fate. Sosuke Aizen wasn't only cruel to his subordinates, he was also cruel to his own people. Once someone was no longer useful, he would kill them without hesitation. Of course, Aizen's success had a lot to do with his ruthless personality. However, if we ignore Dongxian, the Hogyoku will definitely be taken away by Captain Wuchen in the end. If he fuses with the Hogyoku, the situation will be very bad for us. Dustless's strength was unfathomable. If he got the Hogyoku, he would be like a tiger with wings. There was no need to fight him, they could just prepare a suitable coffin. Don't worry, Jin. Aizen's voice was full of magic, and his eyes were full of wisdom. Ikamaru Jin's restless heart calmed down for a moment. If we can't do it, we can use Kyoka Suigetsu to command the entire Shinigami. Aizen touched his glasses and continued. Even if we can't do it, we still have those guys. Jin's eyes lit up. Captain Aizen, are you talking about Team Zero? Aizen smiled and said calmly, yes, it's them. If Squad Zero can be controlled well, they will be our best fighter. They can help me teach that arrogant brat a lesson. He has ruined my plans time and time again. Sometimes, enemies could be used. The key was the method. Chapter 1025. Aizen's eyes shone brightly, his entire body brimming with vitality. His confident appearance made others involuntarily submit to him, and the entire world instantly became his stage. From beginning to end, Jin was the only one in the audience. Keep an eye on Dustless. Once he takes East Sensei's Hogyoku, our plan will begin. Aizen walked out of the dark laboratory with Ikamaru following behind him. When there were a lot of people, Aizen and Jin went into acting mode. Jin had a cunning smile, while Aizen had an expression that said he would rather die than be involved in the same situation as Sosuke. In front of outsiders, Aizen and Jin continued to be hostile. 3 days later, in Hueco Mundo, in an unknown cave. Did East Sensei find where he hid the Hogyoku? Dustless asked impatiently after Hellable appeared. Hellable nodded. Master, don't worry. I got the news that East Sensei hid the Hogyoku in a room in Lost Yi Temple. After Bail Egan died, East Sensei, who was kicked out of Soul Society by Dustless, became the uncrowned king. He even built the majestic Lost Yi Temple. Of course, he was still Aizen's subordinate. Hearing this, Wuchen was not happy. Instead, he was puzzled and said, Hogyoku is a top-secret material. How could the East deity let you get the information so easily? Hellable had only pledged allegiance to Dustless for 3 days, which meant that she could find out the location of the Hogyoku in 3 days at most. Such a short period of time was unscientific. Master, you mean? Hellable frowned, she thought it was strange. Occasionally, it would take a few hours to find someone in the huge Las Noches palace. Hellable didn't even need 3 days because she had spent 2 days just waiting for Dustless. In other words, Hellable found out about the Hogyoku in 1 day. That Hogyoku is very likely to be fake. It's used to test the loyalty of you great Void Masters. Understanding flashed in his eyes, Wuchen affirmed. East Sensei and Aizen weren't idiots. The Hogyoku wouldn't let Hollows touch it. Those two are despicable. Hellable scolded. She almost stole it. If she was caught, East Sensei would kill her without mercy. East Sensei is meticulous. It's impossible to get him to hand over the Hogyoku. Hellable said. Hearing this, Wuchen smiled mysteriously. With an unfathomable expression, he said methodically, don't worry about such trivial matters. If there is no way, we can create a way. Let East Deity take the initiative to lead us to get the Hogyoku. Who has a problem with Aizen or East Senpai? Do you want to be a traitor? Dustless suddenly asked. Hellable lowered her head and pondered. Her mind filtered through all the great voids of Las Noches, and an arrogant face appeared in her mind. Grimjow, he is the one who complains the most, and the one who can't get along with East Deity the most. With a sinister smile, Dustless said coldly, in that case, I choose Grimjow. 1 day later, in Void Palace. Capture Hollows for experiments and give them to those bastards. East Sensei wants that guy. In the vast desert, a man with blue hair looked arrogant and dissatisfied. He scolded, I have to do the work of those trash. If there's a chance, I must let Ise-sensei, do you know why you're doing the work of those trash? It means you're trash too. This job suits you, Countless photons floated in the sky and condensed into Dustless's face. Looking at it, the person who complained about Ise-sensei was Grimju. Bastard, who are you calling trash? Grimju was furious. He blew out a violent Ryatsu storm toward Dustless. You're playing with fire. Do you know what happens when you provoke the death god? Your soul will be destroyed. You're as arrogant as Hellable said. Dustless nodded slightly in his heart, ignoring the oncoming Ryatsu, then smiled and said, "What a coincidence, I'm a death god." Raising 5 fingers, Dustless shook them and said indifferently, "Trash like you within 5 moves? Oh no, 5 moves is too much for you." Shaking his head decisively, Dustless closed 3 fingers, shook the remaining 2 fingers and said, "With only 2 moves, I can let you go to heaven." As soon as he finished speaking, the furious Grimju rushed over. So slow. Looking at the explosion sweeping toward him, this exaggerated lightning-like speed was as slow as a turtle crawling in Dustless's eyes. Hades 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. A ray of rainbow light flashed, and dangerous energy fluctuations lingered in the palm of his hand. After a little preparation, it stood out. Boom, boom. Grimju, who was blinded by anger, was hit one by one. The powerful explosion seriously injured him. His whole body was blasted black and emitted the smell of barbecue. How can such a low-level Hades kill me? It's reasonable to say that it can't even break through my steel skin. Grimju was shocked. He moved his body a little, and the tingling pain spread all over his body. There were wounds all over his body, and blood overflowed from them. He stared blankly at Dustless. When did this kind of low-level Hades, which had no effect on the Great Void, become so powerful? Didn't I say before, you are trash, so a low-level Hades can kill you? Dustless looked up at the sky, his nostrils facing Grimju, and his arrogant expression silently told him that looking at Grimju made him feel dirty. You forced me to do this. Being so mercilessly mocked by Dustless, Grimju, who had a bad temper, was furious and used one of his strongest moves without mercy. A blue flash appeared in the palm of his hand, and its size continued to grow. Void Flash? Ignoring the existence of the energy ball, he looked down at Grimju as if he was looking at a bug. Chapter 1026. Flashes of light cut through the sky above the sky, and it was very gorgeous. Wherever it passed, Ryatsu was burning, which was particularly spectacular and shocking. However, this was the fire of Grimjou's anger. Shame, hatred, unwillingness, fear. All kinds of negative emotions filled Grimjou's mind. He was so angry that blood oozed out of his gums, and his teeth were about to break from clenching them. Boom, boom. The unhappy Grimjou struggled to hit the ground with Void Flash to vent his inner depression. Thousands of negative emotions gathered in his body and mind, and Grimjou's whole body was about to explode, and his Ryatsu went berserk. Bush, bush, bush. A shocking divine rainbow swept over from afar, and Grimjou, who noticed it, immediately returned to normal, with a little confusion on his face. He was familiar with this unusually powerful Ryatsu. Her libel? After confirming that it was her libel, Grimjou sneered, and his sneer was full of disdain. Although her libel was a Vastotod, she belonged to the female Hueco Mundo and was not welcomed in the entire Hueco Mundo, even if she was a Vastotod. By the way, I can work with her libel to deal with that guy. Thinking of Dustless, Grimjou's calm expression immediately became ferocious. He was beaten by Dustless and lost an arm, so he hated Dustless to the bone, and even had the impulse to perish together with Dustless. Wiping the sweat from his face, Grimjou remained calm. He valued his face more than his life, so he didn't want her libel to see him in such a sorry state. Her libel, a reaper is attacking. The unstoppable golden light approached Grimjou, and without showing signs of stopping, instead, it increased the eruption of Ryatsu, and slender legs kicked towards Grimjou's face. Bang, bang, bang. Caught off guard, Grimjow was directly blasted down, smashing a large deep pit and eating a mouthful of sand. Give me an explanation. Otherwise, even if you are a confidant of Aizen and East Senpai, I will kill you. Grimjow roared hysterically, his sad tone full of endless killing intent. It was very difficult for him to speak, and he was choking. Widening his eyes, Grimjow was shocked to find that one of Hurlebel's feet was stepping on his face and blocking his mouth. What a great humiliation! Even if you are Aizen's confidant, I will kill you. Grimjow, whose expression changed greatly, said coldly. The remaining Ryatsu in his body surged, and he planned to go all out. His only remaining arm had already condensed Void Flash. You're really weak. Other than putting on airs, you're completely useless. Narrowing her eyes and looking at Grimjow's twisted face with disdain, Hellebel had a look of pity on her face. At the same time, a bright golden light swept out from the soles of her feet. Kakaka! The foot that stepped on Grimjow's face instantly became hundreds of times heavier, crushing the ground and breaking Grimjow's nose. Impossible! Vasto Lord, how did your spiritual pressure become so much stronger? It's much stronger than Ulquiora's. Feeling the spiritual pressure that was about to crush the world, Grimjow roared in disbelief. And where is the void mask on your face? In fact, due to excessive shock, both of their eyes were wide open. Short-sighted rats deserve to be abandoned. Hellebel sneered again and again, her unique Zanpakuto was raised, and her eyes were cold. Obviously, she was going to kill Grimjow with one strike. If you kill me, Aizen and East Sensei will not let you go. Grimjow, who forced himself to calm down, threatened. Hellebel's eyes flashed with a sneer. Reorganizing her thoughts, Hellebel remembered Dustless's previous instructions and said, "The one who ordered me to kill you is actually East Sensei Sama." Looking at the bruised Grimjow, Hellebel said coldly, "A jutsus is always a jutsus. You are not qualified to follow Aizen Sama. People like you can only use it once and then throw it into the garbage dump." Is the strengthening of your spiritual pressure also related to Aizen? Grimjow suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice. Hellebel said respectfully, "All of this is thanks to Aizen Sama and East Sensei Sama. All of Vasto Lord underwent the second Hogyoku transformation, and their abilities in all aspects have skyrocketed. They have also taken off the void mask, and their spiritual pressure has also skyrocketed." There was no doubt that these were all nonsense taught by Dustless to Hellebel. The reason why the mask could be taken off was actually because of the truth-seeking ball. The skyrocketing of spiritual pressure was even simpler. Using half of the Hogyoku taken from Urahara Kisuk to strengthen Hellebel's soul. Grimjow's face was pale, and he felt betrayed. Their group of Ajuchas had only experienced the Hogyoku transformation once. As expected of a leopard, a fierce predator is really easy to deceive. Hellebel secretly thought, and suddenly felt that Grimjow was extremely naive. He was obviously just an insignificant insect, but sometimes he disobeyed the orders of Aizen and East Sensei. If it weren't for the fact that this ant still had some value, he might have been obliterated by Aizen. Anyway, you Ajuchas are just abandoned pawns. It's normal to use the Hogyoku transformation once. You should feel honored. It's a waste to use the incredible power of the Hogyoku on you. It's a stain on the power of the gods. Hellebel said coldly, degrading Ajuchas as worthless. You can become stronger again because of the so-called Hogyoku. Grimjow's expression was extremely ugly, and the corner of his eyes was replaced by cunning. He thought greedily in his heart, if I can get that Hogyoku, I will definitely be able to advance to Vasto Lord, or even surpass that level. Even Aizen and Shinigami won't be in my eyes. Although this faint change flashed by, Hellebel still clearly caught it, and immediately sighed at the success of Dustless's plan. Chapter 1027. The purpose of Dustless beating Grimjow before was to make him aware of his vulnerability, and then Hellebel came out to strike Grimjow's confidence, which was actually arranged in advance. All in all, it was to let Grimjow steal the Hogyoku, and Dustless finally reaped the benefits. Looking at Grimjow's broken arm, Hellable sighed at Dustless's unparalleled calculation and deliberately said, Ulquiorra has been baptized by the Hogyoku and gained the ability of super regeneration. Thump. Grimjow's dead heart suddenly beat rapidly, and he felt a burst of excitement. If he gets the Hogyoku, his destroyed arm may be saved this time. No, I absolutely can't die in this place. Las Noches Palace is close at hand. I want to get the Hogyoku, dominate Hueco Mundo, and wipe out Soul Society. His eyes bloomed with strong vitality, and any creature in a critical situation will erupt with incredible power. Boom, boom. Under the stimulation of the Hogyoku, Grimjow immediately burst out with unprecedented Ryatsu and miraculously forced Hellable to retreat, and then used all his strength to rush to the sky. Boom, boom. After a few void flashes, Hellable turned a deaf ear to it. Out of sight, out of mind, she simply let Grimjow leave. TSK? That kid was so angry, he probably stole the Hogyoku. If East Sage knew that Grimjow betrayed her for no reason, she would probably vomit blood in anger. After a few breaths, there was a burst of gloating laughter, and then Dustless fell from the sky. For no reason? Hellable was speechless as she looked at Dustless, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Grimjow's current appearance was all calculated by Dustless. After experiencing a huge blow, the strength that he had always served betrayed him. No matter who it was, their temperament would change drastically like Grimjow's. Looking as far as the eye could see, Grimjow, who was 100 miles away, was right in front of him. Dustless frowned and said, I deliberately destroyed one of his arms to make Grimjow have hope in the Hogyoku, but now he is running so slowly, indicating that the blow to him was not enough. If his other arm was destroyed just now, he would be full of motivation. Dustless's self-mocking made Hellable break out in a cold sweat. What's the next step, young master? Her libel blinked and asked expectantly. This series of developments was just as Dustless had predicted. It's very simple. Grimjow can't steal the Hogjades openly. He will definitely sneak into Las Noches Palace secretly. My shadow clone has been observing Grimjow's movements. When he succeeds in stealing the Hogjades, I will send my shadow clone to inform you. At that time, you will rush over with East Sage. Hellable's eyes lit up. This strategy was not bad. It could improve her relationship with East Deity. In the future, East Deity might ask Hellable for any secret missions. But at that time, it would be exposed. Suddenly sensing that something was wrong, Hellable said, East Deity's betrayal of Grimjow was made up by the young master. Once they meet, the truth will be revealed. Hearing this, Dustless had expected this and said confidently, It's very simple. Just let East Deity see Grimjow steal the Hogjades, and then I will kill Grimjow myself, not giving him a chance to speak. Hellable could gain trust, and Dustless could also steal the Hogjades, killing two birds with one stone. Damn East Deity, damn Aizen Sosuke, when I get that Hogjades, I will definitely teach you two a lesson. Taking advantage of the short gap between shifts, Grimjow slipped into the secret room where the Hogjades were stored. While cursing Aizen in his heart, he searched for the Hogjades with all his might. Found it. A unique flash in the darkness attracted Grimjow's attention. After a moment of joy, he quickly ran over and held the mysterious bead with both hands excitedly. This feeling, it's not right. He had been transformed by the Hogjades before, and Grimjow also had an impression of it. Although the bead in front of him had the same energy nature as the Hogjades, its power was 1,000 miles away. Grimjow, you disappoint me so much. There was a burst of explosion, and the closed door was turned into dust by the impact. East Deity appeared with a gloomy face, followed by Hellable. When Grimjow invaded Las Noches, Dustless's shadow clone informed Hellable. And after Hellable received the news from Dustless, she immediately went to inform East Deity, asking Grimjow to be compassionate and seize the Hogjades. East Deity, who was skeptical, rushed over just in time to see this scene in front of him. Aizen-sama has been very kind to you, and you dare to betray us. East deity spoke with anger, and his Zanpakuto was unsheathed, intending to clean up the mess. Everyone hates traitors. Hearing this, Grimjow sneered again and again. It was obvious that East deity sent Hellable to kill him, but now he slandered him as a traitor. Outrageous, even if you are shameless, you can't be so shameless. Grimjow argued with reason and said with a cold expression, you are really good at reversing right and wrong, you are the ones who mercilessly abandoned Dash. Grimjow, Aizen-sama has been very kind to you, and you dare to betray us, you have the ambition of a wolf. Without giving Grimjow a chance to speak, Hellable said fiercely. Grimjow opened his mouth and was petrified, cursing Hellable in his heart. She said that East deity was going to send someone to kill him, but now she changed her words and denied it. When he was about to question Hellable, in the darkness, a cold light swept across, and Grimjow lost the chance to speak forever. Pucci. Grimjow's head was separated from his body, and his neck was like a fountain of blood. It was a fatal blow. Chapter 1028. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They looked at each other in dismay before looking at the figure in the darkness at the same time. It's you? East Senpai, who was the first to react, glared at him. He clenched his fists and said coldly, there is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you insist on barging in. Don't forget whose territory Las Noches Palace is. The sound of footsteps came from the darkness, and a figure stepped out from it, revealing a smile like a spring breeze. So what if it's your territory? There is no place in this world that I can't go. Facing the murderous gazes, Wuchen appeared to be at ease. He merely glanced at the Great Void Realm experts who were glaring at him covetously and ignored them. He's just a captain. How dare he be so arrogant when he barged into Las Noches Palace alone? He doesn't think that we are on the same level as that idiot Grimjow, does he? He can kill us if he wants to. We have more people, this captain will definitely die. The Great Voids discussed with each other and clamored to teach Dustless a lesson, but they didn't dare to do anything. Their eyes were fixed on East Senpai. His expression was full of hatred, and he didn't dare to do anything. Obviously, he was very wary of Dustless. Cough, cough, cough. Clearing his throat slightly, Dustless said, call out Hogyoku, this is the order of the head captain. East Senpai was indifferent and sneered, head captain? That's your death god's head captain, it has nothing to do with me. Dustless's expression was indifferent. He was waiting for him to say this. After I catch you, I'll directly extract your memory. Clean, simple and fast. Seeing that East Senpai was stubbornly resisting, Dustless immediately gave up the idea of attacking him verbally. There was no need to waste his breath on this kind of person who was loyal to Aizen. Remove all the restrictions I gave you before, and kill him with all your strength. East Senpai waved his hand and ordered with great momentum. Boom boom boom, boom boom boom, boom boom boom. Hearing this group of Great Void Realm cultivators, who were scrambling to flatter Ji Hao, seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Their spiritual pressure leaked out in an unstoppable manner, converging into a vast sea of spiritual pressure and pressing down on Ji Hao. Ka ka ka. Dustless's body instantly cracked, visible to the naked eye. His entire body was in a mess, and the cracks devoured his entire body without any pattern. Can't even withstand a single blow. Upon seeing this, the Great Void Realm experts were incomparably disappointed. Their eyes became dim and lifeless. They originally thought that they would be able to display their strength in front of a powerful enemy, but who would have thought that it would be so weak, shattering with a single touch? A bunch of idiots, all of you attacked together. Back then, he was the one who chased me out of Soul Society. Seeing the Great Void Masters relax, East Deity raised her voice to warn them. He shook his head and whispered, no wonder Lord Aizen wants to use these voids as pawns. Vasto Lord is no exception. East Sensei agreed with Aizen. Hollows were arrogant and looked down on everyone. It wasn't their fault, it was their nature. They couldn't change this bad habit, they were born with it. So dazzling! In the dark space where they couldn't even see their own fingers, an unusual flash of light suddenly appeared. It was so dazzling that all the great Void Masters instinctively closed their eyes. The unique perception of the voids spread out. They could only sense that Dustless's body was unharmed. What kind of joke is this? Wasn't he torn apart? Maybe it's some other strange ability. Isn't this kid wearing the captain's Haori? He should belong to one of the captains. He must have learned Bankai. Maybe it's his Bankai ability. How can the god of death have an ability like super regeneration? He's not a great void. The great void masters were discussing in surprise. Taking advantage of this, Dustless condensed a large amount of light in his hand and shot it out. Yasakani no Magatama. Bang bang bang. There were many of them and they were powerful. They were extremely fast. Many great void masters didn't even have time to react before they were swallowed by the golden rainstorm. One by one, they knelt on the ground in agony. Their faces were filled with fear and extreme pain. Hundreds of holes appeared on their bodies. It was no different from being cut into pieces. Useless trash, what's the use of having you? Seeing this, East Deity Yao revealed his killing intent. He threw out a pink disc of flame in his hand. The target was the great void masters who were howling in pain. Path of destruction, waste flame. Boom boom boom. The pink flame exploded. In an instant, the dark room was lit up and a big hole appeared on the roof. The cold East Deity Yao wanted to kill all the great void masters in one fell swoop. You don't show any mercy to yourself, Captain East Deity. Oh no, Dustless, who realized his mistake, immediately corrected himself. He said apologetically, "It's more appropriate to call you the king of Hueco Mundo." However, East Deity Yao didn't appreciate it. He didn't have time to play with Dustless. Towards the person in front of him who he wanted to kill even in his dreams, East Deity Yao only had one feeling, and that was hatred. It was hatred that went deep into his body, deep into his organs, and deep into his soul. If you're willing to kowtow and admit your mistake and agree to be my subordinate, I will reluctantly let you go. East Deity Yao, who was about to attack, remembered Aizen's words. Aizen also wanted to persuade Dustless to give up the darkness and join the light. It would be best if he could surrender. East Deity Yao didn't like Aizen's idea. He thought it was ridiculous. He might even be humiliated by Dustless. God was very kind to East Deity Yao. His idea came true immediately. Your hollow mundo looks like a cricket. It's ugly and disgusting, but if you're willing to be my mount, I will be merciful and let you go. Chapter 1029. You look like you can turn into a cricket? Although it's ugly and disgusting, if you are willing to be my mount, I will be merciful and let you go. Hearing this, East Yao directly vomited blood, and his eyes were filled with stars. He regretted it so much. He knew that he should not talk nonsense with Dustless, this kind of person whose head was made of stone. Talking to this kind of unenlightened person was only asking for humiliation. The things that you have taken away, I will definitely take them back with double today. Rolling his eyes, East Deity Yao said while gritting his teeth and emitting a monstrous killing intent. What I took? That's a lot. Hearing this, Dustless lazily stretched, but he still couldn't help but ask curiously, power, wealth, Hogyoku, fame. I took too many things. What are you talking about? East Yao snorted, that's none of my business. Today I will take your life. Boom boom boom. The moment his voice fell, a vast and unparalleled Ryatsu began to rampage. In an instant he moved to another planet. It was extremely difficult to walk in this world, and it became 10 times heavier. Frowning slightly, Dustless knew that this was an illusion brought by East Senyo's Ryatsu. It was just a deterrent. Kakaka. The floor under Dustless's feet exploded, and his whole body began to sink. You should have a hard time moving like this. East Yao laughed proudly, and his tone was carefree. Ever since they met Dustless, the tragedy of Aizen's group began. No matter if it was a coincidence or fate, their plans were all vaguely destroyed by Dustless. They suffered losses and were slapped in the face every time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A flash of light appeared and attracted East Deity's attention. He raised his head to look, but his pupils were filled with the flash of light. He didn't know when the elusive Wu Chen had appeared in front of him. Of course, there was also a heavy punch. Bang bang bang. East Xinyao, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. A big hole appeared in the dark Lost Yi Palace, and it became much brighter. He didn't react to my Ryatsu? What kind of monster is this guy? Dong Xianyao's face was covered in blood, and his nose had been flattened by Dustless. Staring at the cold and thin back, he said in a surprised tone, after being strengthened by the Hogyoku, even if it's just a completed Hogyoku, my Ryatsu is completely different from before. Even Vasto Lord felt uncomfortable facing me, and I can easily suppress him. Idiot, Dustless sneered again and again. His tone was full of disdain as he said bluntly, your spiritual pressure is indeed stronger than mine, but spiritual pressure alone cannot determine the outcome of a battle. Although the 10-tailed Dustless chakra had unlimited spiritual pressure, it was indeed limited. You're still far from it. Looking at the imposing and magnificent Endless Night Palace, Dustless felt particularly unhappy, and an indescribable sense of disgust rose in his heart. A mere lackey actually built such a majestic palace? It was really unforgivable. Chakra erupted, and Dustless's body flashed with a dazzling light. The two-faced, four-armed monster covered Dustless's body, and made the same hand seals as Dustless. Tenebrous Tremor Star. Regardless of whether he was jealous or envious, Dustless felt uncomfortable in his heart. It was just a lackey, and the dog shed should be his final destination. At the same time, the outside of Endless Night Palace suddenly became pitch black, and the wandering great voids all looked at the depths of the sky. The perception of voids was different from ordinary people, and the falling super meteorite made all the creatures tremble in fear. Who is it that has done such a heinous thing? They have provoked the wrath of the gods. Why are you still talking? Hurry up and run. That kind of thing, only a great void like Vasto Lord can get rid of it. Countless panicked screams could be heard coming from the usually strictly disciplined virtual night palace. Soon after, countless great void beings fled in all directions. Their fearful appearance made the East Deity very angry. Useless trash, you're actually scared away by this kind of thing, be careful of your lives. Dong Xianyao shouted loudly, and his voice carried the fluctuation of spiritual pressure, and it resounded in the sky within a radius of 10 miles, rupturing the eardrums of all the escaping great voids, and their bodies were split into two as if they were hacked to death. Good for nothing, fence-sitter. Dong Xianyao gritted his teeth and roared. His tone was filled with endless murderous intent and hatred. If you have the time to worry about others, why don't you worry about your own situation? A cold wind swept over with a powerful force, but Dong Xianyao was indifferent. No matter how he was attacked, he could not be killed, and his super regeneration ability could ignore all attacks. Even if it was destroyed, it could be repaired. Lightspeed kick. The destructive fluctuation came from behind, and Dong Xianyao stood still. There was no need for him to run, as he could withstand this kind of attack with his physical body. An ear-piercing roar came from the sky, and the violent vibration made people deaf. Dong Xianyao, who was standing still in the flame, still did not have any reaction. It has completely surpassed the dimension of death and void. Seeing this, Dustless gently nodded, and had a new understanding of the Hogyoku, a heaven-defying material. Dong Xianyao was only borrowing the power of the Hogyoku, and had not completely integrated with it, and could not evolve, but his strength was enough to crush the Captain class and Vasto Lord. And this was still a half-finished Hogyoku. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, a strange fluctuation came from Dustless's body, and a mysterious blue light was emitted, and a mysterious special spiritual pressure overflowed. This is the Hogyoku. Looking at his chest in shock, Dustless's mind came up with an extremely absurd idea. The Hogyoku that he snatched was constantly leaking out mysterious spiritual pressure. Dustless's spiritual pressure, which was originally at the bottom, was suddenly restored. Chapter 1030. The meteorite fell, and the outside of Las Noches Palace was in an uproar. Dustless and Dong Xianyao were in a dead silence. Dong Xianyao, who was confronting Dustless, was even more alert. His clothes were stained with sweat, and he was very nervous. Dustless was the strongest enemy he had ever encountered. Could it be an illusion? That strange fluctuation of Ryatsu just now was unusual. Dong Xianyao thought in his heart. Dustless gave him the feeling of a bottomless reservoir with little Ryatsu left. But who would have thought that in an instant his Ryatsu was filled to the brim? It's really a good thing, TSK Diskit, but it's a pity that it's only a half-finished product. If it's complete, once the host feels fear or death, it will evolve to a higher realm. Dustless sighed in his heart. He felt the steady flow of Ryatsu in his body. He moved his muscles and bones comfortably, and there was a crackling sound of bones. His eyes were like torches as he stared at Dong Xianyao, and a thought-provoking smile appeared on his face. It should be two Hogyoku that resonated. Tsuke, it also means that the other Hogyoku is on him. Dustless thought in his mind. He didn't fuse with the Hogyoku at all, but the Hogyoku unexpectedly leaked Ryatsu. Dustless guessed that the two Hogyoku resonated with each other, and then caused Ryatsu to leak out and fill the bottomless Ryatsu in his body. It seems that the Hogyoku developed by Aizen is around. Or it's in Dong Xianyao's hands. Dustless looked at Dong Xianyao with eyes full of desire and desire. At the same time, Dong Xianyao also noticed the change in Dustless's Ryatsu, and his face changed drastically. Hado 88, Flying Dragon Strikes Thief Sky Thunder Cannon. Dong Xianyao, who realized that something was wrong, waved his hand, and a fierce and unparalleled beam of light appeared. The target was Dustless, who was somewhat stunned. Boom boom boom. Everything that came in contact with the beam of light, including life force, was evaporated, and blood was easily penetrated. The place where Dustless's combat power was previously was just like a stretch of charred ruins. Let's see what you have to fight me. His spiritual pressure spread out, not letting go of any corner. Sensing that Dustless's spiritual pressure had completely disappeared, East Deity heaved a sigh of relief. The nightmare that had been shrouding her was finally gone with the wind, returning to dust. Her heart was exceptionally relaxed. It's finally over? What a bunch of trash, shouting here and there, where's your sense of propriety? East Deity let out a sigh of relief. Hearing the noise coming from outside the virtual night palace, he coldly snorted. Just as he was about to turn around, his face instantly froze. A figure had invaded his vision. He didn't die. When did it happen? Pucci. Before he could finish speaking, East Deity Yao's entire body was in incomparable pain. His arm, which was sharper than a blade, forcefully tore open his chest. You bastard, you were aiming for that right from the start? Dong Xianyao clenched his fists tightly and raised his trembling hands, wanting to stop Dustless's actions. The Hogyoku isn't something that someone like you can touch. Using all the strength in his body, East Deity Yao's hands grabbed towards Dustless. The surface of his hands was covered with some materialized spiritual pressure, shining with cold light. Immediately, he slashed towards Dustless. You don't know what's good for you. Seeing this, Dustless's expression turned cold, and a ray of golden light shot out from his fingertip. Pucci! Blood sprayed onto the ground, and two more severed arms appeared. Both of East Deity Yao's arms were empty, and he was in extreme pain. His expression was distorted as he knelt on the ground, sweating profusely. Found it. After a few breaths of time, Dustless's eyes flashed, and he took out a blue sphere from East Deity Yao's chest. You relied on this thing to give those greater void the power of death, right? Dustless said as he played with the sphere in his hand. Looking at the Hogyoku in his hand, this was only a semi-finished product. However, East Deity Yao had broken it in advance, and there was a huge flaw in it. Umph. Hearing this, East Deity Yao turned his head. Dustless's ugly face made him annoyed. The head captain gave me the order to destroy this thing. Destroy? Ha, stop dreaming. The material used to construct the Hogyoku is special, and no one in this world can destroy the Hogyoku. Not to mention a half-baked like you, even the head captain can't do it. East Deity Yao laughed crazily. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless smiled and looked at the Hogyoku in his hand playfully. Suddenly, a black sphere jumped out from his back. Kakaka. A broken sound attracted East Deity Yao's attention. The smile on his face disappeared, and he looked towards the source. The Hogyoku was slowly eroded by the black sphere, and cracks appeared. It's fake, it must be fake. Seeing this, East Deity Yao roared crazily. I tried everything in the past, but I couldn't destroy the Hogyoku. That's why I said you are an ordinary person. Dustless said calmly. The fragments of the Hogyoku were rapidly peeling off, and in just 5 or 6 seconds, it turned into nothing, destroyed by Dustless's ruthless use of the truth-seeking ball. In this way, your dream is over. Looking down at the dazed East Deity Yao, Dustless knocked him out with a karate chop, but he didn't kill him. This kid was finished, the Hogyoku was taken away, and both his arms were crippled. It didn't matter whether he was alive or dead. Capturing you back to Soul Society is another great merit. You can also get rid of my suspicion, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. There was a reason why he didn't kill East Deity Yao. Dustless still needed East Deity Yao's mouth to let the whole Soul Society know that the Hogyoku was destroyed. Say, in order to get the 2 of you, I have never been so tired in my life. Looking at the 2 Hogyoku in his hand, Dustless was very excited. The scene of the Hogyoku being destroyed was just a self-directed illusion. Chapter 1031. Looking at the 2 bright gems in his hand, Dustless frowned, and his pupils immediately twisted sharply. Kamui! Space twisted, and the 2 Hogyoku in his hands suddenly disappeared. It's time to leave, Wu Chen sighed as he glanced at Dong Xian, who was bleeding profusely. He immediately walked to his side and stopped his bleeding arms. He was still counting on Dong Xian to give false testimony. It was not worth the loss if he died. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, the sky suddenly turned dark green. Dustless was slightly stunned and looked up. A huge void flash came head-on. One after another, it's endless. With his eyes fixed, Dustless pulled out the first-generation ghost blade, covered the tip of the blade with a touch of golden Ryatsu, and then threw out the blade. Kacha! The golden slash cut through the thistles and thorns, displaying an overwhelming power. The incoming dark green flash was directly torn into 2 halves, brushing past Dustless's shoulder. Boom boom boom. 2 large holes were blasted in the ravaged Lost Yi Palace again, and the air blew in. The dull Lost Yi Palace was much cooler, and it added a little vitality. With the faint light, Dustless saw the newcomer. Okuiora. Ripples appeared in his calm eyes. Dustless still remembered this vasto lord. Among the 10 blades in the future, he was the only one who could perform the second return to blade. Your boss is almost dead, do you still want to stop me? Pointing to Dong Xian Yao, who was unconscious and his heart was about to stop beating, Dustless asked. Although it's said that when the Grim Reaper meets a void, it's usually a fight to the death, but today I'm in a good mood, so if you know what's good for you, get out of my way, and I can pretend that nothing happened. Having just seized the Hogyoku, Dustless smiled and was indeed in a good mood. Clang clang clang. While speaking, Okuiora's Zanpakuto was unsheathed, and his face was cold from beginning to end. He said, like you said, 2 hostile races can only fight to the death. You're in a good mood, but unfortunately, I'm in a bad mood. This kid is so loyal, Aizen. Dustless smacked his lips. He couldn't help but admire Aizen. Aizen was able to train his subordinates to the point where they were willing to die together with the enemy. Bang bang bang. The air exploded several times in succession, as if space had been torn apart. Okuiora disappeared without a trace, his speed making people blush with shame. Got it. Ulquiorra's emerald eyes bloomed with ominous light, and he immediately displayed the brutality of a great void at the level of Vasto Lord. In an instant, a blue flash condensed in his hand and compressed into a sharp spirit spear. Dustless was completely unaware as he stabbed towards his heart. Pucci! A fatal blow pierced through Dustless's body, leaving behind a ghastly hole the size of a human head. Strange, seeing this, not only was Ulquiorra not happy, he raised his eyebrows, a puzzled look on his face. Why didn't he bleed when his heart was pierced? His mind was filled with confusion and hesitation. This was the first time he had encountered such an incredible thing. It was completely beyond his imagination. Just as Ulquiorra was thinking, a turbulent repulsive force hit him. Shinra-tensei. Without even the time to react, Ulquiorra was easily sent flying. Kakaka. Dense cracks appeared on the wall that was far thicker than steel. Ulquiorra was deeply trapped in it, and his dazed eyes seemed to have not realized what had happened. In a flash, he was easily forced back. Dustless flicked away the dust and said, "It's normal to feel confused. I'm fundamentally different from the death god and void you fought in the past." Elemental transformation was enough for him to run rampant. Staring at the fallen Eastern sage, Dustless's eyes began to distort again. Divine might. A vortex appeared in the void, and Eastern sage was immediately swallowed by it. As for Ulquiorra, he was ignored like air. Dustless simply left him with his back view and left. Vasto Lord was actually not as exaggerated as he had imagined. For ordinary captains, he was very troublesome, but for some veteran captains, the so-called Vasto Lord was actually just SOSO. It's not good for you to leave just like that. Where are your eyes looking? Your enemy is in front of you, don't look up at the sky. We were ignored. The great voids that suddenly appeared blocked Dustless's path of retreat. Seeing him looking up at the sky, they roared angrily. He actually shattered the heaven tremor star. The meteorite that fell from the sky turned into countless particles. The initiator should be the army formed by this group of Ajuchas and Vasto Lord. He's very strong. I heard that Baal Egan was defeated by him, the middle-aged great void said with a cautious tone. My mission is completed. Before my mood turns bad, it's best to leave. Dustless had no interest in this group of great voids. He already obtained 2 Hogyoku. His next mission was to return to Soul Society and fuse with them secretly. You want to leave? That won't do. If you leave so casually, we will be the unlucky ones in the end, Nabila said with an unfriendly expression. The other great voids also nodded with fear. They watched Dustless leave unscathed. How could Aizen Sosuke let them go? Dustless frowned. He did not intend to kill this group of voids, but there were always some arrogant idiots in this world who thought they were strong. For example, this Ajuchas called Nabila in front of him. Since you all like to play the game of Ascension so much, I will fulfill your wish. Dustless's expression turned cold. His killing intent exploded. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.